really, I think the overriding need we have for escapism and some time away from the heavy stuff. I mean, it's certainly a heavy period with a moment in time in America, if you will, with what's going on, whether it's civil unrest and social discourse and the lack of it at times, and social distancing certainly also applies, and then pandemic and the economic impacts of all of this, as we're seeing in our businesses around town and throughout the country. Just a lot on our plate, and everybody's worried. And I'm not saying football solves all of those things. It certainly doesn't. But it could certainly help. It could certainly help bring us together, and it could help businesses and the economics that I'm referencing. Certainly would help here at this station. So, listen, all of us are looking on with great interest, is my point. And I thought we were headed headlong down that road to play some football in the fall, but now I'm not so sure. And I guess the question becomes, A, will you be able to pull this off? And B, does it start on time? I think is the big thing here. We're starting to run out of time for it to begin as scheduled. And that's the part that I'm kind of keeping a close eye on right now. Again, we've got a little time, but we kept saying that, right? We said that a month ago and a month before that. Well, you got a little time. You're running out of time.
Well, especially if, just say it this way. July 13th is when that 6-week clock is supposed to start to kick in for a lot of universities to be able to kick off on time, where they have their install, their general meetings, and that ramps up, obviously, into the practices just a couple of weeks later. But July 13th is now soon, because tomorrow's July 1st.
Can you believe that?
Tomorrow is July 1.
Not a lot of plans for the 4th of July, I don't think, for most folks this year. Certainly another thing that is greatly impacted by our current set of circumstances. I know you were going to go out of town, but now you're not, and for a variety of reasons. And, same thing goes for some members of my family. So everybody's kind of just like, well, all right. So you know what's going to happen, Tom? What's going to happen is the stuff that drives me nuts anyhow, which is the folks setting off fireworks inexplicably for 3 and 4 days at a time. July 2nd, July 3rd, July 4th, July 5th, and 6th, and 7th. And sure, that's what happens
I'm
these
sure
days.
Steve and Maggie love that, right?
Oh, buddy. It's the worst, too, because you can't, what are you going to do? It's like, sorry, Maggie. Hang in there. And Steve is my old man now. And, bless his heart, he's starting to do old man things. Like wake up in the middle of the night at 4:40 or 5 o'clock in the morning and begin barking because he heard a raccoon outside. He used to just be chill. Now he's like, roof, top of his lungs. Buddy, it's 4:40. I had another, 30 minutes to an hour. I had a little time.
I have such a silly sense of humor, but the idea of loud noises rousing people from their sleep, as long as they're, safe noises, always makes me laugh. So the idea of the Cameron household springing out of bed because Steve has heard something.
Nobody else does. I'm the only one who gets up. That's the problem. I have to go quell the situation. I have to go assure him that everything's all right. I think what happened was starting about a month or two ago. First of all, he's 12 and he's a bigger dog, so that's kind of an old 12. He's not fat, but he's just, big dogs don't always live as long. And he's 12 going on 13, and I just, his hips are starting to bother him. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the old man. But not to go morbid here, but he's starting that I can live with, right? Okay, so there are going to be physical issues that crop up as they get older. It's the mental ones, though. His eyesight isn't as good as it once was. His hearing is not as good as it once was. And now I'm not sure sometimes Steve's all there. He's just looking around. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning barking. I'm like, what are you barking at? I suspect that there's a family of armadillos that are underneath the shed out back, and he hears them scurrying about on the back deck. And he's just not having it. He's like, not in my house.
Now, but you think he would have let that go in the past?
Yeah, he would have growled at the window or something like that, but he would have, he would have known that we're sleeping. We're all sleeping. Not now. He's roof, top of his lungs. Goes on for days. Doesn't stop. drives me nuts. I got to go out there and show him everything's all right. I'm turning on lights. Hey, man, we're good.
So it's one wolf at a time, or does he go crazy like somebody knocks on the door?
No, it's like one wolf at a time, and he spaces them out, and it does not, and it's the worst.
So it's like dripping from water from a faucet.
Yeah, you'll lay there, woof, and then you're like, okay, maybe he'll stop. Just about to nod back off, woof. It just goes on and on, man. It's difficult and very, very, very frustrating. So
I'm hoping he hangs around like Wheezy, because old man dogs and old lady dogs are the best. They've got that perfect sense of, hi, how you doing? I'm excited to see you. I don't really feel much like jumping on you right now because
I can't jump the way that I used to.
But I'm so thrilled to see you. I'm going to give you the half tail wag. It's not going to go all the way up. It's just going to be about parallel to the ground. That's all I can give you.
Yeah.
But I'm thrilled to see you. Okay, now I'm going to go over here.
And lay down. I'm going to go lay down is what I'm going to do.
That's too much for me.
I'm a little tired. I gave you my initial hello. That's all there is. Yeah, I know. Well, that's where we're at. I wish I could tell you, I really wish, and I can't wait till it happens. But I don't get it. I read these stories just like everybody else does with recruiting. And bless everybody's heart who really works on recruiting. But, man, I'm telling you, I cannot look at recruits for the 2022 class. I can't do it, Michael. I can't do it. Nope, not doing it. But I read that article from a couple of days ago where it was like 25 for 22, an early look at the top 2022 targets for FSU. No.
How do you even compile that list is what I want to know.
Well, I mean, and there are guys that you want to take a look at. There are players that, especially if they're offensive linemen, and a lot of news has come out lately about there's a Texas offensive lineman, there's a Michigan offensive tackle, there's some other people that Florida State's offering or looking at. It's good to know we're zeroing in on big-ass guys for the offensive line. That's good, but I just can't do it.
But, like, to compile the top 25 of rising juniors, right, would mean that you have to have a base list of 200, 300 kids at minimum that would potentially qualify as they're entering varsity years of football.
Right.
I don't know, man. I don't know how you go about doing that unless there's a bunch of unmarked white vans around the country just scoping out parks and games.
I will say this, in the world of recruiting, Tom, I do get more and more excited on a regular basis about what Leonard Hamilton and his staff continue to find a way to do. Have you seen this latest kid? The Alex Chiku kid? I'm sure I'm saying that name right. You don't pronounce the T, do you?
No. It's like Keith Kachuk in hockey.
Yeah. So, anyhow, 6'11", reclassified, graduated early to move to the class of 2021, or to 2020 from 2021.
That's right, as in he could play this upcoming season if there is one.
And we're in the mix, my man.
We made his top 8, I do believe.
Yes, we did. He's tall, obviously, and athletic. He is ranked in the top 40 nationally, 6th at his position. But we're on the list along with Oregon, Illinois, Arizona, Southern Cal, Mississippi State. Young man, you have no reason to go to Mississippi. Alabama. There you go. So come on.
That's it. Okay, so Oregon's a good program.
Yeah, Illinois is a good program. Used to be.
If you want to stay in the South, we're the only player. If you want to stay in the
you don't want
East,
to go to
we're the only
Alabama.
player.
You don't want to. Yeah. Now listen, I could understand being enticed to go to somewhere like USC, but that program's not nearly the program that Florida State is.
That's a premier offer. He's got 2 of them, and they're on opposite corners of the continental United States.
That's correct. Looks like he's going to be a Knoll, my friend. That's what that looks like to me. I don't know. We'll see. Quote, I had a lot of comments from people surprised that I was only a junior. The other reason is that I hope to be getting drafted after 1 year in college, but my original plan was the draft of 2022. I think 2 years of college is better than 1 year in high school and 1 in college, quote, unquote. He talked about style of play, relationship with the coaching staffs, and he wants to have an opportunity in terms of things that are important to him to play as a freshman. We're in a unique place right now, and we have documented and talked about it before. So I would be curious, and I'd like to talk to Coach Hamilton or somebody else there in the program, just because, I still wrap my mind around the fact that not every elite level prospect who has a certain list of demands or things that they want to have happen for themselves, such as early playing time, sees Florida State as a place because the Noles might not acquiesce to those demands because they're in a place to turn down elite players. That's how well they've recruited, where they can go, yeah, that's great, Alex. We understand your concerns and what you'd like to be able to do. Can't guarantee you playing time.
This is something that speaks to just the number of blue chippers we bring in, but then also the development that we can pitch as well. Because
Sure.
if this is a kid that you want and you want to give him a chance, a real chance at playing time, Ira tweeted this out. I think it's, forgive me, it's we're missing a 5-star commit and signee one time in the last 5 or 6 recruiting cycles.
Yeah, it's been amazing, the run, yeah.
And the year we missed, we only brought in
Devin Vassell.
Who is somebody as a freshman that by the end of the year we said, yes, sir. So you've got precedent for both. Development, high-end recruits, and then also playing time for a freshman if you earn it, but you really have to earn it like Devin did.
Well, creating that competition, that depth of talent, and the opportunity, one thing is that while they don't have to acquiesce to these demands, they can certainly promise that kids have opportunities to, on a merit-based system, earn their way into the lineup, and they have not turned their back on those kids, even when they've had depth and veteran depth at that. If you're good enough, he'll play you, and you'll garner more minutes as he sees fit, but he's been a very good gauge of that talent. You mentioned Vassell. Vassell comes in, and early we get a look at him, and we kind of like the potential. About midway through that season, we're like, that guy's got a little what for to him. And by the end of the year, we were like, he's your star next year. And it was crazy just to watch that play, but that was because they eased him into that.
Right,
it was smart the way they handled that.
But you could see it even in the non-conference slate
December
that he had a spacing and an understanding the way that Rodas did. Because, listen, as the TV announcer called him, Rodas, Brian Angola could navigate tiny spaces, create angles, and he understood what to do with the ball.
Love me some Rodas.
But he didn't finish around the rim as well as Devin did early on. And you thought, whoa, okay. So if you can see the angles and you've got some instinct to you to finish around the rim, Leonard was quoted early on in Devin's career saying, it's not how you teach it, but shoot, if he doesn't get to the basket and find ways.
Finds a way to finish.
Then he hits the corner 3 in the ACC tournament that year against Virginia Tech, and you go, wow. So we gave him the ball in that situation. He answered at that age. Special.
Yeah, there was a lot of what for to his game. A whole lot of, I've talked about it before, but those guys that have that moxie, have that little something extra, they're given those opportunities. And I think that's why guys are willing to sacrifice minutes too. They buy into the bigger picture here. To be able to sell that in an era where guys want to come in and play 1 year and take it to the NBA and think that they got to produce minutes, points and minutes in order to do that is amazing.
Yeah, we've got a pitch unlike anybody else in that regard. But I guess the reason I'm saying that you could pitch him more the Devin Vassell track is because he's not a clear one-and-done type, even with a reclassification. Sometimes there are kids who reclassify, and they're still 5 stars, top 15 players in the country. In his case, he's a blue chipper, but it's not like getting Patrick Williams.
Well, and if you look at the body type, it's not even close to getting Patrick Williams. This is a kid who could come in. He's super athletic. He's obviously got the length at 6'11", but when you see his body type, he's going to get pushed around. He's not going to be able to command and dominate down low, at his weight.
Meanwhile, the other kid we were on, Musa Sisi, was thought to be going to potentially LSU. He pulled back because of COVID, and then also LSU is kind of circling the drain right now for sanctions. We haven't heard from him in some time, but Florida State is still at least a significant consideration of his.
That's an area when I begin to look at recruiting, basketball in particular, you think about all the things that have happened in the last 6 years to Florida State basketball with the successes on the court, the successes off the court. This is a bright light, a beacon amongst Florida State athletics with the inconsistencies in football and all that. I really never thought I'd get to a place where I'd get excited about blue chip basketball prospects on a weekly basis. But that's the new reality, that those kids consider Florida State and that they commit to Florida State, that those are realities, that you can look at a kid and you can see Florida State's name alongside Kentucky or, UCLA or whomever and go, yeah, they could commit to us. That is insane.
And what's crazy beyond that, too, is it's not like getting a 4 or 5 star player like we did in the lost decade, where it's like, well, that's a project. It's not, you don't get projects. You don't get
No,
kids who,
no,
who maybe,
no.
I'm not so sure if he's going to make it through his time at Florida State, red flags here or there. You get the type of blue chippers that are model citizens. I mean, that's really hard to do. It's hard enough to get a blue chipper, but you can take a risk on some kids, maybe test scores, maybe off-the-court concerns, and schools turn them away, like Duke and Kentucky. We're getting the ones that they want, at least one or two of them.
Biggest change in my career as a talk show host covering Florida State, by far. And it was the one we dreamt of, the one we talked about when I first came to ESPN. I used to talk about it at the old place too, but when I first got to ESPN, it was kind of like, we can do this. They do it at other places. There are schools that are good at football and basketball. It exists. It's a reality. It can happen. You don't have to just solely commit to one and then hope like hell every once in a while you get lucky every fourth year to have a decent team in basketball. No, there are schools that have done both. We can be that.
Biggest change in my time since I started tagging along a little while ago to now. Marvin Lewis is no longer the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals.
How long did that take? All of your career?
Well, since my
Many
middle school years.
Post, yeah. No, I know. Well, and that subject in and of itself is funny because every year we would see the renewal and I would only think of you because I knew how much it bothered you. They're bringing it back, Tom. That was like a part of the show I miss, where I would see we've decided to come, extend Marvin for another year, and I'd be like, oh, I can't wait to get into the office.
I imagine like the owner's kids going like, surely this is the year. Nope.
Bringing it back.
Run it back.
Let's do it again. We were that close. Jeff Cameron Show.
Like Benny Bama, road where the muggers and the dogs.
because I like a cold beer from time to time. I did take interest in the Athletics college basketball staff ranking the best college towns in America by their local beer options. I thought surely Tallahassee, Florida will make this list. It has become a hotbed for college basketball, and obviously the beer choices, well, they abound, and I must commend the vast majority of the local breweries in this town for the products that they have produced over the last 5 to 7 years. I am impressed with so many. I'm not going to single any out right here, but there hasn't been a local brewery that hasn't at some point or another made a beer that I absolutely find delicious.
I think that was the best part of doing the Man Cave show with you the one year was we got to go to different breweries.
Oh, it was awesome.
And you got to try everybody's different things, and you got the VIP experience with it, but you got the stories behind the beers.
Well, I like learning about it too, and there's a real science to it, and these folks really put in an awful lot of hard work, and I can learn a lot from them because I certainly have never made beer, so I would listen intently to kind of understand the process and figure out how they came up with some of the various choices, whether it's a lager or a stout, whatever it might be, a sour. I would learn how they did that. That was fascinating. I still find all that stuff fascinating. I also enjoy the fruits of their labor. But this is Tallahassee, we've both been to a lot of college towns. I've been to a ton of them. There just aren't, and I love universities. Anytime I'm in a city or anytime I'm in a different state, somewhere outside of the state of Florida that I haven't been before, if there's a local university nearby, especially if it's a big-time football or basketball school, I always go check it out. I walk the campus, and I also want to learn about, their tailgates and their schools and in the various, traditions. I just love all that stuff. And so I've been known to have a cold one, whether it's East Lansing, whether it's Seattle, Washington, whether it's Baton Rouge, Louisiana with you, wherever it might be. I've sampled the goods, Tom. That's what I try to do. I try to food-wise and beer-wise. And that is a rich tradition amongst those that cover the world of college athletics and professional sports in general, right? It's an advantage you have when you're just suddenly in Baltimore. Oh, look at that, I'm in Baltimore. Oh, look at this, I'm in D.C. Look at that, I'm in Charlotte. Let's go to this bar tonight. Not been there.
I have to say that the food rankings, Baton Rouge, it's going to be a long time before I find somebody that unseats them. But a lot of towns around the country have a lot of good places to go get beer.
Yeah, I've been to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it made the list at number 20. And listen, they have great breweries in Ann Arbor, and really the state of Michigan does in general. By the way, one of my favorite aspects of the list that they put together here, I'm going to tell you and spoil it for you. Tallahassee's not on the list, and I think they were a little biased to these basketball schools that have a greater tradition than
basketball.
Yeah, that's right, Minnesota. So I don't know if that's why we didn't make the list. We're a relative newcomer to being an elite basketball program.
We'll beat just about any one of these towns' asses in basketball. That's what we'll do.
Certainly Tulsa, Oklahoma, or hell, we've made a habit of beating Louisville, and that's on the list at number 21. Michigan's quality, but one of the things that
we got manhandled.
That's true, you did. One of the things that I liked doing was at the end of every write-up, where they talked about the various breweries and different types of beer that you can get in these cities, they had drink this, and so whoever it was that reviewed that city and those breweries, they gave you their recommendation. So a lot of the names for these beers, very imaginative, well done. For example, Cherry on My Wayward Son is the name of a beer in Ann Arbor. And I don't know if it's any good or not, but bravo, that is so good. Cherry on My Wayward Son, you guys win. That's really, really good. All right, Evanston, Illinois is on this list. I was shocked, but then I remembered that's basically Chicago. It's going to make it. I got you. Lawrence, Kansas. Okay, so Fog Island Fieldhouse, sure, famous. Really didn't think too much about breweries in Lawrence, Kansas, but all right.
Here's one for you. If we had our own brewery, it would be...
we might someday, Tom.
Well, we're going to have time on our hands.
Yeah, we might.
Coach K's Sour Puss Ghost.
And I would want the limp handshake on the side of the can, just his hand.
That's the slogan. Basketball.
Loser.
Or like a Ham's Adoption IPA, and it's
I
a caricature
like that,
of Chris Mack.
I like that. By the way, the answer for Lawrence, Kansas, according to this reviewer, was that you need to have the Black Stag C3PO, which is a chocolate cherry chipotle porter.
What town is this?
I knew when I said it, Tom was going to be like, can we go there? It's Lawrence, Kansas, my man.
Oh, jeez. Anybody listening from Lawrence, Kansas?
Send us a C3PO, the Black Stag C3PO, a chocolate cherry chipotle porter. Does sound fantastic.
I'll Venmo your ass. I'm not asking for a gift. I'll Venmo your ass.
Your favorite town in America, Tom, South Bend, Indiana, made the list.
Oh, my God. Of course they made the list of best towns.
Well, best towns for beer is what they're saying. South Bend's on nobody's list of best towns to live.
People need to dump beer down their throats because they live in a dump of a town.
Oh, the vitriol.
We need to be inside and indoors. We can't remind ourselves. We need to stay inside.
They want you to drink the Green Bushes Star Chicken Shotgun IPA, which I would like to do.
That's a lot of images when you read that off.
Richmond, Virginia. Our old friend Larry Wright from Richmond, Virginia. I'd like to attend the VCU Richmond area and check out the bars, but the El Deuterino White Russian Milk Stout, yes.
Whoa, that's right up your alley.
Of course.
I mean, of course, the title for everybody, but
I've been to Columbus, Ohio, ran down the field with my father, and they have Wake Up and Tailgate with Wolf Bridges Cinnamon Toast Brunch.
That sounds disgusting.
I think so. It blends cinnamon, vanilla, cream, ale, and coffee.
So it's like Fireball and coffee in a beer. No thanks.
I don't think so. I did all that blending in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I had beer and V8. It's a red beer that you have. Not so bad. Helps prevent hangovers. Get a little V8 in you.
A little V8 juice.
Yeah.
Well, you got to be careful. Do you have facilities around your tailgate?
Yeah. That's an interesting place. Des Moines, Iowa. They want you to have the Exile Touts. It's Zoltan Session IPA. Nah, no thanks.
So Des Moines, Iowa, ahead of Tallahassee, Florida. Get the hell out of here.
Agreed. Eugene, Oregon. I would like to visit too. They talked a little bit about Corvallis having maybe perhaps a better beer selection, but the Viking Braggot Company's Valkyrie is a fresh hops, and it's got some blackberries to it too.
It's also a good basketball program. They've been pretty good.
They have been. Missoula, Montana, where my sister used to live, site of one of the greatest movies ever made. They want you to have the Kettle House Cognac Lake Missoula Amber. Cold and warm. You can get it either way. They say chug away. It's delicious.
Okay. They don't mess around in Missoula.
Athens, Georgia. We've both been to Athens.
Oh, that's a really good basketball program up there.
Why did they do that? What is going on?
This is the basketball staff ranking towns.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Athens is a great place. Boulder, Colorado. If you can handle angry hippies like I did, there are plenty of choices. This gives me the opportunity to remind everybody that I might have been overserved in Denver the night before we went to Boulder, and the trek from Denver, from Lodo to Boulder, was nearly the death of me. However, soldiered on and unfortunately had to go into that little bagel house, and that poor girl has probably never recovered. That was a line of people who are just deeply saddened. Sir, I'll take a water.
Maybe your reputation preceded you and the hippies were just standing up for the bagel shop. Maybe that's what happened.
Well, because if you've been to Boulder, where we were that made me run across the street to the bagel shop was this pizza joint that's famous there that for whatever reason, I don't know why they would ever do this, but the ceiling is on top of you and everybody signs it. So it's like a big...
It's a little claustrophobic type place.
Oh, Jesus, you walk down some steps, Tom, the ceiling's right on your head.
You feel clammy all of a sudden.
Oh, and you're sweating, and they serve pizza. That's their big thing. So they come out with the pizza, and I'm sweating.
It's like the hot pizza oven.
It's hot as Hades in there, and the roof is about to touch my ears, and it's loud, and I was like, okay, ordinarily I might be all right with all of this. In the world of COVID, they're not going to make it. There's no ventilation there. They got to have to do something. But and it was funny because we were sitting there and my dad goes, Jesus, son. That's all he said. Jesus, son. Like judging me. I go, what? He goes, just shaking his head. I was ghostly white, sweat coming down my face. Matt's laughing. He's like, oh, buddy, I've been there. I was like, this ain't cool, man. I'm not okay. This game's a 7 o'clock kickoff. I'm not okay. It's 11 in the morning.
Also, there's another town that provides a Sweet 16 regular in Boulder.
Oh, I know. Yes, Austin, Texas made the list. I don't really know why.
Not a good
either.
basketball program, but
no.
oh my God, let me count the ways that they have everything.
They note that the electric jellyfish IPA from Pint House Pizza is delicious.
Pine House is the truth. Yeah, they get it.
Madison, Wisconsin, one of the great cities in America. That is true. It's the Palo Alto of the Midwest. So I would like to go visit and have the Carbon Forest Fantasy Factory perfect IPA.
Yeah, I'm sure the fantasy is games in the 80s. They're about to see 47 points and a big dub.
Asheville, North Carolina is also good because they have counterculture coffee stouts that don't suck.
Well, they fill everything with weed there, too.
They do, too, yeah. I like Asheville. It's a wonderful city. It really is very different than the surrounding cities because Asheville is forward-thinking. The rest of North Carolina, maybe not as much. Burlington, Vermont was number 1.
Vermont?
They make the tournament every year. We just got done beating them a couple years ago.
In a home game for them.
And remember we had your boy on who was the former coach, and he was cool
yes,
for that interview?
He was a great interview, and the best part was for Game 2 when we played Ja Morant, we had Tim Linnefeld on, and he said, Tim, how's Hartford? And this is before we started recording.
Yeah, that was in Connecticut. That was in Vermont.
We played Vermont in Hartford.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry.
And he said, Tim, how's Hartford?
It
sucks.
Sucks. Yeah,
and Tim is nice enough
he's
that
the
he'd be the
nicest guy in
Chamber
the
of
world.
Commerce for
Yeah.
anybody. Like, oh, there's some cool stuff here.
Yeah.
Which means it sucks, but he tried.
Yeah, you and I are the type that would go, this place is garbage. What are we doing here? Like I said about El Paso. But my man.
South Bend.
Yeah, but my man is like, yeah, this sucks. It's almost like he felt bad.
I tried to find something redeeming about it, and there just
There's
wasn't
just
anything.
nothing
Like,
here.
holy shoot. This should be part of the interview.
They want you to have the Fiddlehead Brewing IPA. Zero Gravity's Madonna IPA is also good. And they get into the Alchemist Focal Banger IPA. All right.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. If you have a heady topper, if you have not had one of those, you can try that. Or the Madonna and Conehead IPA.
Tallahassee better be on this list next year. You fools. You fools.
The first 4 that didn't make it, and we weren't on that list either.
These guys.
Fargo, North Dakota, Albuquerque, New Mexico, which I hear is great. Fayetteville, Arkansas. Get the hell out of here with Fayetteville. Charleston, South Carolina. I like the brewery district in Charleston, South Carolina. That's the only place in South Carolina that gets kudos from me.
Okay, if you're going by districts, I could see the argument, but not the selection. The selection here is phenomenal.
Oh, the selection here
We don't
is
have
amazing.
like a row of breweries,
No.
we've got
we
really
need
good
rows
ones.
of breweries, but yes, yeah. We got to survive COVID first.
Losers.
It's the Jeff Cameron Show. A massive wildfire in Colorado briefly forcing Bucs outside linebacker Shaq Barrett and his family to be evacuated from their home today, but the fire was successfully contained before it got to their house. Barrett also took the time to go on SiriusXM NFL radio on such a perilous day. That's interesting. I bring all of this up to say that he intends to sign the franchise tag and play on its $15.8 million salary for the Bucs this upcoming season. Quote, if I don't get anything done long-term, I'm going to sign that one for sure. Long-term probably would be really hard right now with the situation in the world, quote-unquote, from Barrett. Yeah. I don't think many teams are handing out long-term deals.
He's had fantastic perspective on this whole thing from day one. This goes back to, say, week 10, week 11 of the NFL season when it was a reality that he was going to be a sack leader. And so he was going to potentially, have a big payday with the Bucs. And he said, if it's the franchise tag, it's fine. I've been looking for a home, a place I like to play, and this is it. So if that means franchise tag, no big deal. And that message has been consistent all the way through to today.
Well, give him credit here, too. He recognizes that he would be viewed as a one-hit wonder, that he had no indicators prior to age 27 season that he would be capable of doing what he did. There were no indicators that he could do something like this. And so he comes out. Folks, unless you forget, and I had briefly, he had 19 and a half sacks last year. That's no joke. 19 and a half.
And he drew how many other holding penalties and had a couple called back. I mean, there were certain games where he'd be contacting the quarterback 6-7 times.
Yeah, he was without question the steal of free agency. Nobody signed anybody to a greater result for less money than what the Bucs did with Shaq Barrett. Listen, I think they got a little lucky. I don't think anybody thought that guy was going to do that. Nobody did. I didn't hear a single expert across the league opine about how Shaq Barrett was going to impact the Bucs. And, he got paid $5 million last year. That's pennies for what he put up. And the franchise tag does keep a player from hitting the open market of free agency. But, if you think about it, he's been in the NFL for 6 seasons. This 1 year at 15.8 is going to pay him more than he's made in the 6 years in the league combined.
And he's earned every damn penny. And he's not delusional about what he is.
Well, he gets this payday because of last year, but he will or will not earn the long-term deal based on what he does this year. It's as simple as that. I mean, this is a show-and-prove season.
But he's in a really good position again this year because JPP is back. Because in the middle, you've got an older Ndamukong Suh, but then also Vita Vea, who's going to be hand surgery, but he'll be fine. So, I mean, if that's what your front four looks like, yes, they're depleted a little bit depth-wise. Nassib was nice to have. But they've got Will Golston again, who's also a good run stopper. I mean, you can let that guy tee off and do what he does best, and you've got it all accounted for the rest of the way. He's the number 1 rushing defense in football last year.
Yeah, which made it all the more remarkable that for 3/4 of the season they couldn't stop the pass. They have the Bucs, $4.2 million in available cap space, second lowest in the league. About $3 million of that is earmarked for signing the draft picks. So any raise for Barrett is, obviously going to require the Bucs to make some tough decisions at the end of this upcoming season. Now, Tampa will have more flexibility for signing next spring than they have currently. But remember, Chris Godwin is going to join Levante David on the open market. Gronk's a 1-year deal too, so technically he does too. I don't care about Gronk. I would say this, and it's just the nature of the beast. Maybe he proves us wrong again, Tom, but I got to believe that you should say to every Tampa Bay fan, enjoy Levante David because this is it. We're not signing Levante David to a long-term deal after this season.
No, well, the only way that you could position it is you have a lot of success this upcoming year. Maybe it's not a Super Bowl, but it's a playoff run. You win 11 games of the regular season. You get to the NFC Championship game, something along those lines, and you can pitch it. Come on back for a pay cut. We're going to take another run at this thing. You might be able – Listen, that's the deal. We thought when Jameis was drafted that perhaps in the near future, after his rookie season, second season, people were going to take less money to come to Tampa to play with him because, he's going to light it up. Never really happened that way. But with Tom Brady, you win 11 games, 12 games, and then you go a couple rounds in the postseason, and you are perceived to be a piece away.
You're a piece away, yeah.
You might get a hometown discount from a couple of players.
You could. If they thought that you were legitimate contenders to win a Super Bowl, that is what everybody's chasing. And ultimately, I think you are only in that set of circumstances willing to give up your payday. Because, again, you have to be a mercenary. You have to be your own best agent in these situations because that's a league that is merciless and you suffer injury just like that. And all that money and potential earnings is out the door. And a lot of times guys will just take the money and they'll go, hey, I'm taking that money and going to Arizona. Best of luck, guys. I would have loved to have stayed to make a run at a Super Bowl, but it's rarer and rarer to see it unless they really think we really are just a piece away. We really are just a player away from maybe making a go of this.
This is a big year for Mike Evans in that regard, too. I don't believe he has a no-movement clause, and he's got several years left on his deal. You sign Godwin, all of a sudden, because you got to commit a lot of money to Chris, and Mike Evans is in year 7, year 8 of his career. Somebody might be a piece away in a different market looking for a downfield, huge,
he'd
also
be that
red zone
guy
threat.
with a couple years remaining, yeah.
It might be the time to you want to say goodbye to a big receiver with a hefty contract a year early, not a year too late.
Of course you do, and I want to pay Chris Godwin, so I'm already doing the math in my head. We'll see what Shaq Barrett does this year. If he has another monster season, then you're going to have to pay him. But
in a way, I kind of thought maybe it's necessary this past year because you had so many good receivers, but we had other needs we had to attend to. If we were a couple pieces away, you might say goodbye to that contract and go get Jefferson like the Vikings did. Now you have Jefferson, Godwin. You have to build new chemistry with the quarterback
start all
anyway.
over, though, and rookie receivers, you just never know. I don't know, man. I mean, think about this. I'm thinking about certain receivers that we've seen. Well, yesterday it was interesting. There was a story yesterday on Johnny Manziel and talking about his football career being behind him. Kelvin Benjamin's football career is behind him. He is out of the league.
Yeah,
you just don't know, man.
If Jameis came back, that would have been one of the calls I'd make. You want to come back for league minimum? We'll work your ass out. You and Jameis have a connection. Let's see what you guys can do together.
Think about what that guy was in Carolina and what he was for a quick minute in Buffalo.
Yeah.
But we always questioned whether or not he cared to play football. We always questioned whether or not he was going to stay in shape. We always questioned whether or not he was ever going to really try all that hard to stay in the league and maximize that potential, that body.
It's probably the most awe-inspiring thing I've seen that closely on a football field because I was standing on the sideline of Clemson when he does the twirling catch in the front corner of the end zone.
Good throw.
To see where his hips got, because the logo, you see that like Osceola is staring me in the face from the hip pad. To see where that is above my head, I'm like, oh, at that size, that is just stupid.
Yeah, I mean, he's body type wise, he's Julio Jones. He lacks, everybody does lack what Julio Jones has.
A little taller too, right?
Yeah, but I mean, he's body type wise. Like when you see Julio Jones, you're like, ain't nobody covering that. I mean, that guy's a different dude. When you look at him and you watch it, when he really – think about the catch he made in the Super Bowl. Think about the catch they caught him making in warm-ups Monday Night Football that time. Yeah. That leap where – I mean, it's just the dumbest thing in the world.
It's a bodybuilder and a graceful ballerina all at the same time.
But Kelvin never wanted to be great. He never – I don't think he loved football. I think he just was blessed with a football body. I think everybody realized, like, if you get that guy motivated and he's in shape and cares, even for a season or two – there's nobody that's going to cover that.
Yeah, I remember the day it was the War Room, maybe the same year with Jernigan, maybe it was a year later. But Jimbo was holding court before they kicked us out. And sometimes you do that, sometimes you just left. And he said, think about that Kelvin Benjamin. He'll be better than anybody I've ever coached, Michael Clayton included. And I thought, wow, Michael Clayton was a beast in college. And then obviously he was the NFL Rookie of the Year with John Gruden. That's a hell of a thing to say about Kelvin. But then the second half of 2013 happens a couple of football seasons later, and you go, well, I could see why you thought that, Jimbo. Good gracious, what this guy can do.
6'5", 250 pounds. His career, if he never plays again, and he very, very well may not, will have been summed up in a grand total of 61 games to the tune of 209 receptions total. He will have scored 20 touchdowns in his career. But, I mean, that is a brief-ass career.
For somebody with that kind of a gift.
Well, he plays 16 games in 2014. He ends up with 73 receptions and over 1,000 yards. He is a star. He hits the league by storm, and he is a star. The following year in Carolina, he plays in 16 games again, 63 receptions, just under 1,000 yards receiving. In the 2 years combined, he's scored 16 touchdowns.
Had some performances, at least one big one in the playoffs, too.
That's correct. Then he ends up going to Buffalo, and he gets. I guess it's 2017. He's kind of traded there. Is that what that was? He got traded then?
Yeah, he got traded. I forget if it was midseason, but it could very well have been.
He got hurt and then got traded, like something halfway. Yeah, because it looks like it's a Karam thing here. But anyhow, he only has 16 receptions, 32. Okay, yeah, so he ends up with 48 receptions combined with the two teams that year.
Yeah.
And so you look at those totals. I'm having to add quick math. Almost 800 yards. Then he's there in Buffalo, and it's 23 receptions, and he's out of the league.
Well, he was somebody who we all knew here in Tallahassee. You got to get involved early, right? First couple of drives, even if he's the fourth or the fifth read, Jameis is going to go to him because you got to get Kelvin engaged. That 2013 season. And he gets to the league. He's got an inaccurate passer in Cam Newton. Then he goes to Buffalo, where quarterbacks go to die. So if he's somebody who needs to be engaged in the game early with an accurate passer who's willing to make sure that he's a focal point just to get him going, and you've got Cam Newton who can't hit the broadside of the barn for most of his career down the field when you're talking about the kinds of throws or kinds of catches that Kelvin's used to making, and you go to Buffalo before they're even halfway decent, yeah, man, you could see where he gets disinterested fast because that's his default setting anyway.
Yeah, oh man, there's a lot of money being left on the table here. I'm just like,
if Jameis stayed, they clearly didn't like Justin Watson in Tampa.
No.
Okay, get rid of him and pay Kelvin the league minimum and see if you couldn't have started something. But alas,
he could. Yeah, if he were Jameis, wouldn't you call him now? See if New Orleans would take a flyer on him.
Yeah, I don't know if Jameis has that kind of pull just yet.
Yeah,
but if Drew goes down a year or two from now, Jameis is kicking ass with the Saints. He might say, "What do you say, Bubba? Hit the gym.
Let's reunite.
6 months.
Yeah,
get on that
yourself
diet.
in shape. Look at your body. You know who you are, what you can do. Let's dominate. Let's go do this one more time." Yeah, I just thinking about it. Yeah, it's a crazy number. Chef Cameron Show 97.9 ESPN Radio. Well, now we know. Welcome in, hour number 2. I'm Jeff, that's Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com, also on YouTube. Hello, YouTubers. All 3 hours get posted upon the conclusion of the show, both on iTunes and in our audio vault. Own audio vault is what I meant to say, but of course, you can also find it on Spotify. The SEC kickoff delayed. ACC kickoff delayed. And that's not surprising. Postponed is what the SEC Media Days announced. They will not take place as originally scheduled, planned for July 13th through the 16th. Media days have been postponed. The league had previously adjusted its week-long media event in Atlanta to a virtual-only approach, obviously due to the COVID-19 pandemic. League spokesman confirming today that the SEC won't do that as scheduled. And, so we knew they were going to a virtual model, and same for the ACC meetings, Tom, that we were both very much looking forward to. It's a fun trip every year. I like Charlotte as a city. Quaint little place, but there's enough to do. Good restaurants, good people.
Expanding rapidly. Every third person you saw on the street was a construction worker putting up high-rises.
Yeah, it's been going on there for the last few years that we go. But the ACC kickoff conducted virtually July 21st through the 23rd. It'll be very interesting to see if any of that gets done and how that gets done. It'll include live coverage on the ACC network. John Swofford will be there, of course, and head coaches and select student athletes. I suggested this before. I guess we'll tune in and be able to hear their comments and I guess ask questions via a Zoom meeting of some kind.
Yeah, you were right. I didn't think at first that maybe they'd probably just do it on the television, and then what you consume is what you consume, media and fans alike. But there might be private Zoom sessions for media members to speak to specific coaches, and maybe you can, record specific interviews and or like the beat session when the Pen and Mic Club assembles around somebody and they have a 45-minute. But the problem, with the SEC delaying it, they were already going to be digital, but delaying it. The 13th was a big day for a lot of programs because that's when the 6-week clock
You could kick
starts.
off the 6 weeks, yeah.
So what does that signal? A fear that we might not be able to kick off the 6-week clock the way we thought we were going to.
Well, and I'll talk about this more. I was going to save it for the 5 o'clock hour, but we've had a running theme for the last week or so. I mean, look, on and off again, our concerns shift on a daily basis. We have more immediate concerns, obviously, with family and friends and amidst a pandemic. But big picture, when you're just solely talking about something like football, there's a growing sense that maybe this is going to start a little bit later than we thought, if it starts at all. And you're certainly holding out hope that it's played in some fashion. There's no doubt about that. But more and more, I'm beginning to see signs. This might be small in the big scheme of things. And some of your smaller universities really are going to struggle with the financial hit they're taking, whether it's providing tests or whatever it might be. But, Morehouse today saying that they're canceling their season. They're not the first university to do it, but all have been really small schools that maybe lack the funding to be able to cope with their new reality.
The thing I'll say, and we said before back in March when
don't cancel something now that you can wait another month for, or you've got, the spring.
Exactly. You've got a whole nother semester. Everybody take your finger off the red button. That's the cancel button. We don't want the cancel button. There's a yellow button right next to it, which is the delay button. If you need to hit that one, go for it. Do not hit the damn red button.
Well, I think what happens here is collectively you begin to, have grave concerns because the SEC, they're going to plow through. They're a conference that's not unlike the NFL in the sense that they have acted as if nothing's wrong and they're going to be playing full stands, no problems whatsoever. This is the first indicator that they now realize maybe that's not the case. So you get a bit of news like this. The SEC network is no longer listing its media days on its television schedule for that week. We now know that's not happening as scheduled. It's been pushed back. You have typically Greg Sankey's annual State of the SEC address and all that stuff that happens there. That's being pushed back. People very much in that conference look forward to that. I understand that. The ACC media days, as we now know, they've gone digital. We're not going up to Charlotte like we normally would. All of that, and that's in late July. That's in, it's the July 21st, I think I just said, right? So these are all indicators coupled with, just yesterday on the show, we talked about the Dayton game being canceled with Southeast Missouri State. Like, in and of itself, you go, well, I don't care if Dayton doesn't play Southeast Missouri State, but these are all indicators of a much larger concern as it pertains to football.
Yes, but let me be the optimist for a moment, because don't we need a little bit more optimism? If that event is – the reason that event is scheduled in that part of the calendar is because it's before camps start. So that's the only time you can do it. You're trying to control the news cycle in a non-traditional college football month, yes, but this is scheduled for July because the kids need to be on campus by August to get camp going. So you can't just fly up in the middle of camp and take your head coach and a couple of players with you. So if nobody's actually needing to assemble physically somewhere, then media days can be held in the middle of August for all we care. Hell, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all because people don't need to get on planes from different organizations.
Showing a proper level of caution, you're right, is a wise thing to do and not something there's no need to rush this. You're absolutely correct. It's just, I know how these things work, right? They begin to accumulate, and every day it's a nugget here, it's a nugget there, and these are all indicators or things pointing to a reason to have an overriding concern about what's going to happen with football in the fall. And there's just no doubt, especially down here, that, listen, it's a big damn deal. Fall football is a huge deal, and we all know its impact on the community, on the universities, obviously on the businesses. So we think about the economics of that, and it's ominous, and it really is a reason for people to, to wring their hands, to be concerned.
There are certain categories, though, that they already knew that this is going to be bogus. And I wonder, maybe it's a good question to ask some of our friends who are in the hospitality community. But I would imagine if I am somebody running that type of business, well, if you can have a world in which football and attendance is possible in the spring, and it's not in the fall, and I'm a business owner here locally, well, that increases the chances that people are going to come to town, right? Because right now those chances are kind of nil.
Virtually nil.
That you're going to get people from Miami or Orlando or
Correct.
Tampa to come up.
You're not traveling anywhere. I'm not traveling anywhere.
You'll have hardcore boosters.
People from those cities aren't either.
And then people from the city.
Right.
But you increase your chances, I would think, exponentially.
Yeah,
that you could have, if I'm hotels, whatever.
What's the cutoff date on that? Mid-July? Late July? Do you finally just say, okay, guys, this did not go as planned. We're pushing it back to the spring. When would they announce that?
You've got a couple of weeks into December that you can, you could delay into when it's exams time, I would think. Like, so you could start the season a couple weeks late, I think, and then trail it all the way into early December and say, all right, we're starting week 1 2 weeks late, but it's going to be continuous to the end. I think once you get about 2 or 3 weeks into let's just say July 13th can't happen. You got about 2 weeks time to get that thing started, or else you're in big trouble. Or you're going to have games being played overlapping, and not bowl games, regular season
games, right?
Which is really hard to do.
Damn this year. Damn this thing. Oh boy, every day. And there's no way you can't you seek to segue from segment to segment and put a cherry on top and say, but there's this. No.
But then there's a segment or a topic, bowl games. Why do bowl games exist?
Yeah.
Because you want tourism dollars to arrive to your city. What good is all you got is a sponsor revenue and a logo at the 50-yard line.
Well, many of these bowl games have featured, a few hundred people at them these days, so.
But wouldn't that be atop the list of frivolous things that mean a lot to us? That COVID is the reason that it's fewer bowl games, not more bowl games.
And you always want more bowl games.
Oh, it's way down low.
jobber, a little 15% jobber, a little something, because we're hurting if you don't know. And so I think a lot of the coaches, most of the coaches, if not almost every coach would, I don't want to say gladly do it, but understanding the bigger picture would say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that, given that the sport itself could be in real trouble. And we're going to need to be able to navigate these waters together in order for us long-term to play the games, and thus I could recoup whatever I may be losing temporarily during these troubling times. And, well, thinking about that, you read the article, and then you think about Jimbo Fisher's 10-year, $75 million contract, and you think a couple of things. First of all, they're paying for a lot of losses. But secondly, and I'll grant you last year's schedule was tough. Did not win any of those games that were tough, but maybe one of them. You could win one of them.
It was very fortunate he won the LSU game 2 years ago.
In 17 overtimes.
Right.
That he didn't deserve to win.
It'd be 6-6 regular season the other way.
Yeah.
That changes a lot.
Bottom line is they're paying a hefty price to lose a lot of games. And, you know, I understand you could say, well, that schedule was ludicrous. Well, you play in the West. You're going to have to take on LSU and Alabama and these teams every year. It's not Auburn. You're going to play all of them every year. So you signed up for it. And they signed you because they thought maybe you could beat them every now and then. You could beat them, right? That's the reason you were brought in. And paid $75 million, which, given where we sit today, seems absolutely absurd. If A&M decides to fire Jimbo without cause, he gets the balance of whatever they still owe him from that $75 million.
I remember that. It was fully guaranteed. I remember when they signed it and the terms. That was something.
It's crazy. He's not subject to any mitigation requirement. He would not have to make efforts to find another job. There's no offset against the $75 million they would have to pay him. Nothing he makes at a new job would reduce Texas A&M's buyout payment. If he leaves on his own, he doesn't have to pay Texas A&M any money. So if he just decides next year these 5 losses are too much for me to take every year, I'm calling it a day. I can't stay here any longer. He doesn't have to pay them back any money. He's just going to walk off into the sunset, having collected what he did to be mediocre. It's a hell of a contract, Tom.
You get your agent a Christmas bonus on that one, right?
An all-timer. And so the crux of the article that I was reading brought up a point that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and that is, if you were one of these coaches that cashed in at the zenith, at the without question, the apex of strength for college football, boy, good for you, because these deals are never going to look like that ever again. That structure is going to change forevermore.
Remember Zenith TVs?
Mm-hmm.
That was a big
I
TV
forgot
brand
about
for a
that.
minute.
That's right.
And a very distinctive remote.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though, I'd have to guard against if I'm Jimbo. And I'm sure they had this conversation. People at Texas A&M are crazy. It's a cult of a university.
And they have more dollars than cents, and so they'll pay him.
But they do weird things all the time. Yeah. That's just normal over there, weird things.
Well, hence our favorite bit. We love to talk about, how you doing there, Jimbo?
Mm-hmm.
Good to see you again. Thought I'd come by the office and say hello.
Some of their rituals, and you got to see how the dog reacts to you.
Swaying and the dog and the kissing and all that,
Yeah. Oh, well, that was one of the great ones. The swaying at the basketball game with the Curb Your Enthusiasm music.
Yeah. Just that faraway look on his face. Like, these
my God.
people are insane.
But I wouldn't put it past the booster types at Texas A&M to be surveilling Jimbo, looking for blackmail, so that if he has to leave, maybe he resigns. And maybe, you know what, in the interest of the university, I would be worried.
You're telling me Texas A&M's the kind of job where if they became unsatisfied with your efforts to win football games and the rather lucrative contract they signed you to, you could wake up with a horse head next to you.
I think they're the Hotel California. You might want to check out. Maybe you can, but you're never leaving, baby.
Yeah, they got
Not with
your
that money.
ass. Yeah.
Not with that money.
You can't just walk away from the mob. It doesn't work that way.
I mean, I think it's our guy in Casino with the cowboy hat. Mm-hmm. And if he wants to stir up some trouble, because you've pissed him off, you've severely underestimated him as a bumpkin because here he comes.
Yeah.
Because he's got devotion to his idol.
Yeah.
His Christ figure is this university.
So it's funny. Charlie Weiss spent 2 years collecting simultaneous buyouts from Kansas and Notre Dame. That fat ass and his rhinestone belt just raking it in, crushing coolers at a bar near you.
They were not rhinestones. They were gemstones, apparently. Legit.
They were belts crying out for help. Please, God. I can't do it any longer. I've got to go. Hold on, Phil. Florida paid Will Muschamp while he coached another team in the same division, including one South Carolina win over Florida. Athletic directors obviously making all kinds of wonderful choices, and it is seen as, or was seen as, the cost of doing business, but that can't surely be the case anymore. In the middle of the 2017 season, Florida decided it was done with Jim McElwain. His contract called for a buyout of $12.9 million, but the final payout was negotiated down by over $5 million because he failed to cooperate with the administration after claiming he had received death threats from Florida fans, and the school said, show us the receipts. Show us your emails with these said death threats. And he said, I've lost them.
We have the FBI here. They can recover them. Just give us your laptop.
That's okay. I've forgiven them. Kansas fired David Beatty in 2018 without cause, then decided a few weeks later they'd withhold his buyout while investigating possible reasons to convert that firing into one that would be considered for cause. Beatty sued. The parties settled a year later for $500,000 less than the full buyout.
Thank you. And you don't think A&M has a full operation in order to make sure that their money's protected?
Well, here's what you do, my man. You don't just fly off the handle out of frustration. You're Kansas. You've lost your ass for years. All you do is lose. That's what you do. What about Beatty's time there made you finally say, that's it? Like, another loss? We lost again? Keith, fire that son of a bitch. How many more are we going to lose? Like, somebody just lost. Like, well, listen, if we don't do it with cause, we're going to have to pay the balance. I don't care. Fire him right now.
I believe their motto is all losses are not created equal. And they know the difference. They are experts.
You know that those with calmer dispositions, cooler heads, are putting their arm around that athletic director. Like, hey man, we've lost 28 straight. Just because we lost again on Saturday, you can't just decide that's it. That the 28th straight loss is too many. We gotta find something on my man.
So if Jimbo fails, and it's looking like another 5-loss season after 5-loss season, you get to 2022, and it hasn't turned. He's recruited well, but they're not cashing it in.
Yeah, because they can't beat Alabama, LSU, Auburn, and whoever they're at a conference. It would do them. It would do them well to stop scheduling Clemson.
He was considered a few years ago to be one of the favorites to land the Alabama job when Nick Saban's time came up. LSU's out now, too, especially if you fail at A&M.
Yeah, probably out, yeah.
West Virginia, though, seems like a perfect place.
Actually, he'd be a great coach for them.
He would.
He would be a great coach for them.
Can't you see him in the blue and yellow?
Well, and they've been looking for some stability. And listen, he's not a bad football coach. He's got issues, but
he'd recruit better than they ever did.
Oh, that's for sure. Brett Bielema, fired by Arkansas in 2017, filed suit against the school's Razorback Foundation, who not only stopped paying Bielema, but demanded that he return $4.5 million for all that sucking. The Razorback Foundation accused Bielema of failing to meet his obligations.
Is that a campaign finance violation? That sounds like one.
Yeah. I would love if they sent that letter. Brett, not only are we not going to pay you, we'd like $4.5 million to be sent our way. What for? What for, you ask? How about all that sucking every Saturday we had to sit through? We got administrators screaming down your name on it, and they're tenured professors. That's what we want our $4.5 million for, you fat ass. The Razorback Foundation accused Bielema of failing to meet his obligations. Oh, yes, Yes. And manipulating some of his contacts or contracts as an NFL assistant to prevent offsetting any of the buyout debt that Arkansas owed him. The suit is still pending.
So if that tenured professor is worth his weight in being tenured, that means that he's brought the university more money than Bielema ever did. Because if you know how grants are split up once they come into the university system, that guy would have recourse after he's thrown out of the stadium to schedule a meeting with the president and say, honestly, you get the payouts from the SEC, and I still probably have brought you more money than this guy.
That is just so funny. I just still think it's one of my favorite stories that Arkansas had gotten so bad and Bielema was just such a disheveled, fat loser and couldn't win to save his life. And that professor was like, that's it. That is it. I can't take it anymore. This guy's ridiculous. And he's drunk at it. A tenured professor hammered at a game screaming at Brett Bielema, who's walking on the sideline.
Well, the first part of that is not not unique to any university. A tenured professor drunk at a football game or a sporting event. That'll happen. Usually brandy, though.
It's
probably not Natty Light.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been in that row, watching this guy slowly unravel over the course of the season. Threatening to do what he finally did. I'm telling you, we lose next week. Now, remember, who's on the schedule next week? Vanderbilt. Sorry-ass Vanderbilt.
Sitting next to two of their tycoons, the guy's like, I kind of hope we do. I want to see what this looks like.
Now, if we lose at home to Vanderbilt, not a road game, this is a home game. We're favored by 2. We've been a favorite 3 times in the last 4 years. Favored to beat Vandy. We lose this game next week. That's it. All bets are off.
You tell him, Dr. Jennings.
Vandy's up 27-0 in the third. They look over at Dr. Jennings. He's just pounding. Oh, it's going to happen today, boys. Dr. Jennings
like
is
Brett's GAs who hate his guts are like, come on, Dr. Jennings, come on.
Yeah. Hey, Doc, I brought some shots. You want a shot? Jello shots for all of us. Yeah, that's a toughie.
Pure whiskey.
Football Scoop reported that USF is hunting for NCAA violations to use as an escape hatch from its buyout obligations to Charlie Strong, whom they fired in 2019.
Ooh. USF is looking to tell them themselves.
They're like, listen, we cheated. Our coach cheated his ass off. You wouldn't know it by the product on the field, but we did. And, man.
Is Michael Kelly still down there?
Michael Kelly's name has been mentioned to become the new commissioner of the ACC. That'd be a fun back and forth for me and Mike.
I don't know.
I don't want Mike to be the next. No, he's a weight guy. No, we got to get outside the triangle. Yeah, don't want him. I have a relationship with him. He's a nice enough guy, but no.
How about Dave Hart?
Good choice. He's a mercenary. Go get it, Dave. Go do it. But he's retired. He's made plenty of money. He doesn't need it. But I wish he'd do it. He's ruthless. So, anyhow, I think it's funny, but it is interesting. Schools now will certainly have to take a very good look at how they structure these deals. And I think these kind of mega 10 years, $75 million one-way street deals for coach in favor of coaches have gone the way of the dodo. That we're just not going to see this ever again.
Yeah, better go to the NFL to get that kind of payday with a guarantee.
Kansas ended up paying Beatty $2.55 million in the school's legal bills in the case were around $350,000 as of April of 2020. So that's $3 million he was owed in the last place. So the Jayhawks, oof. It's funny. It's funny to watch this. But I have thought now, those deals, gone.
Yeah, I still think that the head coaches will be paid handsomely, but I think coordinator salaries are the ones that are going to take the biggest downturn.
Well, and I just
can't pay $1 million or $2 million for a coordinator.
Yeah, and I also don't think you're at a place moving forward where, it was growing. You were watching these staffs to where you'd have 16 people who were, assistants to assistants, and I just can't. That's what was going on at Georgia and LSU and Clemson and Florida. We were increasing our staff in that way too, but I don't know that you're going to be able to do that.
Well, this was like 4 or 5 years ago when Nick Saban and I think it was Urban Meyer were going back and forth as the two highest paid coaches. Then Harbaugh he had to be by a cent or something like that. But their salaries at that point are at these ridiculous lows, like $6 million, $6.5 million. And I remember the stat. Pay every scholarship athlete $50,000 that's on your football roster. You're still making a couple mil a year.
Yeah.
That puts it in terms that are very easily understandable. $50,000 a year for every Scully football player you have, and you still make a couple mil.
And that's how I'm, looking at the house of cards that is college football right now and the danger we find ourselves in. And, you think back to those deals, and that's why I brought it up again. I mean, I don't foresee a time in the future here where all of a sudden those kinds of outlandish sums are being paid to football coaches.
Well, here's where that economic situation and equation is. It's live sports matters so greatly to the television product. Live sports, it's about all you got. Other than a Game of Thrones every once in a while, you got live sports. The top 50 most watched things on television every year is like 40 of them are the NFL.
Yeah.
And then you get a couple of college football games. But where is the cord cutting going to go post-COVID? Because that's considered a luxury. It already was by millennials and people younger than me. So how about people that are in their 40s? Are they going to start cutting the cord more? And so what does that do to, the ability of an Xfinity or a CenturyLink or a DirecTV to pay these ridiculous fees to these leagues? Does it reset the market from the other way? Not the COVID way, but the indirect effect of COVID, which is people aren't going to spend as much money on their TV.
We kept waiting on that for baseball, remember?
Oh, definitely.
But it just never really happened.
But they were trying to sell the regional sports networks. I think whoever had them, like Disney had them, they're trying to sell them back to Fox or vice versa. I can't.
But the Dodgers ended up being valued in the billions of dollars, and they were a mess. They were poorly run, everything, and they were still able to get out from under it because of those TV deals.
But the RSNs are worthless according to the network, and now they're worth even less.
Yeah,
less than worthless.
It's Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. South Africa's Dylan Fratelli. They withdrawn from the event. I don't know that I would describe this, as some reports have, as ominous. I think, you have a total of 10 players who've been obliged to scratch during the last two events. And I think guys are taking great responsibility in protecting the field and protecting themselves. Some of those players that have chosen to withdraw from events have not tested positive at all, but their caddy had, or they played around with somebody who did, and as a precaution, or somebody who did test positive, as a precaution, they decided, look, just to be safe, I'll take the next 10 days, 14 days, we'll test frequently. I want to be sure that I'm not endangering my fellow players. Jason Day, during the event this past weekend, woke up not feeling real well on Sunday. Wasn't sure if it was just a common cold, which, by the way, people still get the cold, still get a common summer cold, happens, but we're all very, very nervous and at heightened awareness of the dangers we might present to others right now. And that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Listen, gone are the days of this power through, go to work, no matter how sick you are mentality. That's going to change, period. That's one of the good things that's going to come out of this. But if you're Jason Day, at that point, you owe it to your playing partners, your caddy, and anybody else that you might endanger to go to the PGA and say, guys, I know I tested negative yesterday. I tested negative upon arrival at the facility. I've tested negative while we've been here through each round. I don't feel well today. I have no idea. What should we do? Well, in the PGA's case, they said, fine, go out alone. Go out early. We're going to send you out by yourself. You're going to play the round before anybody else goes out there. He did. They rolled his ass out there bright and early and let him go on his own. Smart. That's smart. I don't think that's reason to raise levels of concern about the protocol with the PGA. That's rather a reason to celebrate it. It's 10 players that have been obliged to scratch in the last two events, but not all of whom had coronavirus. Jay Monahan, the tour's commissioner, said these positive tests remain within the expected ratio. So we're not. Our concerns are not growing, if that's your question. Harris English didn't play in last week's Travelers Championship. He was shocked when he had to pull out. He said he felt healthy. I'm pleased that the new safety protocols we have in place work this week. I fully support the tour's new rule of not allowing anyone on the tournament grounds until testing negative, as protecting others in the field and everyone affiliated with the tournament and the community should be the number one priority. As a result of a positive test. I appreciate the tour's support, and I look forward to competing again after I'm fully recovered. He said he felt absolutely fine, yet tested positive, so he said, okay.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is once you're done, it's not like you can go to the local bars and restaurants at the cities that you're visiting after, but you've got to feel okay. Like, all right, I've made it through.
Yeah.
There are some among us that are listening right now who are on the other side of COVID. Like, they've been there, they've been through it, and now they're in a post-COVID world. Can they catch it again? That's the scary question. We've got to know about that. And we've got to know if COVID in years to come is going to be like the flu. Is it going to be something like there's a COVID season plus a flu season? That'd be pretty crappy.
But would suck, but yes, manageable.
But if you are Nick Watney or you're Harris English in 2-3 weeks' time and, you're teeing it up at your next event, there's a peace of mind I've got to imagine that comes with that. That you've been there and you've quarantined for 14 days and you're good to go.
Well, and Dylan Fratelli, the other player here who a lot of people don't know, the guy from South Africa, he said, look, he played with Ian Poulter in the first two rounds last week. Poulter has tested negative, and he's not due to play this week. Ian's not playing the tournament. He tested negative and returned home to Orlando. Fratelli missed the cut in Connecticut last Friday, which was hard to do, but anyhow. But he failed the test when arriving to board the tour's charter to fly from Connecticut to Michigan. So he was all set to go play the next tournament after missing the cut. They tested him again, and this is a sign that it's working. He felt fine, just didn't play well, was ready to go play in Michigan. They're like, before you board the plane, we got a test. Oh, by the way, after you land, before you go on the grounds where the players are now staying, you're going to get tested again. Well, They cut it off at the pass. He couldn't even board the plane. He tested positive. He was like, whoa, I feel great. They're like, sorry, you tested positive.
Yeah.
And he says, quote, I'm experiencing no issues, none whatsoever. I feel great physically. I was shocked and disappointed to learn of the positive test today, but I appreciate and understand why I have to remain home.
Well, and here's where the PGA's on top of it again, is that they give you a stipend. Is it the same as finishing, T12 at the Travelers? No. But there's a stipend for following the protocol. As long as you're obeying the principles and the rules of isolation, quarantining, as the PGA Tour has agreed to with their players, they're going to pay you to do it.
Yeah, and again, I think this is the thing that we're going to have to figure out how to stomach and understand that it is going to be part and parcel to these sports returning and playing and efforting to play, that lots of positive tests are going to be announced. As long as the procedures, the protocol in place are working and they're catching these players before they infect a whole bunch of other people, then okay.
I just think it's really, really hard to envision sports having multiple towns that they're traveling to and fro. I mean, that baseball, even if it's regional, even if they can hop on an Amtrak to get from Philly to New York to Boston to Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, that seems like a bridge too far or a bridge too many. With the NFL, you're really just going to play in all these empty stadiums? What the hell does it matter? Why? Why do you have to play in New England one week and then fly across the country play in Seattle the next week?
So how many stadiums would you have?
Maybe 4 corners of the country.
Yeah.
You've got 4 regions.
Spread them out that way.
And you might have to change the divisions, and you might have to change the way that the schedule is for one year.
Everything's on the table at this point.
But it's just that amount of travel. I mean, so what? Your charter team and everybody involved with that has to be quarantined or has to self-isolate as the week goes on. I mean, it seems like an unnecessary amount of miles covered in order to get these games in.
I don't disagree with you. It will be interesting to see. I mean, the NFL has soldiered on as if nothing's going to change. I just have a hard time believing that.
Golf is going from location to location, but you got 150 dudes total.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about an NFL roster plus coaching staff. I mean, that's one half of the equation for one game.
Yeah, and many of the best players can afford to fly themselves. You saw Rory's statement on this before, too, about whether the players in Europe should come over and play on the PGA Tour right now amidst COVID concerns. And he was like, well, if you're interested in your career, you should. Most of us have the means to fly private anyhow, so you absolutely should come compete.
Well, and what's interesting about him is I thought he'd be more tentative in his language, but he came out staunchly defending the PGA Tour's procedures because Roy's not afraid to
No, and Roy's also smart, by the way.
He is. What he said is, hey, listen, guys, look at the amount of positive tests against the total tests.
Yeah.
Against the curve of the actual country
It's
that
not
we're
bad
playing
at all,
in.
yeah.
It's nothing. And if you look at the percentages of the United States a couple of weeks ago, it was in the 4%, and now it's up to close to 8%. I mean, so we're in that range of about 4 to 7.5%, 8% over the last couple of weeks. It's going up. There's no doubt. The PGA Tour is operating at 2-3%.
Yeah, no. If it mirrors that, you're fine. You're good to go. I mean, it's not.
It's not even a concern at that point when you're talking about the viability of continuing and moving forward.
Correct. You got to. Yeah, that's right. And that's all I was wondering. I mean, the PGA has handled it well. They pointed that out. They looked at the numbers and they went on to say, no, the reason that you're hearing these positive tests is because we're testing the way that we're testing, and we're not hiding the fact, and we're allowing players to speak on this, and it's okay.
It'd be a little much for Jason. The one thing do you really want to send him out while you're waiting on a result? I mean, does it matter? Can he tee off at 2 o'clock? If he's playing by himself on the back nine, he's going to fly.
Well, he tested negative that morning. So once that happened, they're like, all right, listen.
But as I understand it, he was on the course waiting for the result because he had already passed the PGA's rules, which was he started the tournament healthy.
No,
and they let him play a few holes, and then they rated to him whether he was good or not. Or if it wasn't him, it was Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
There was somebody who played alone last week on the course waiting for the test result to come back.
Yeah, that's probably not a good idea. But then again, if you're on the course, you're outdoors, you're not that's a ventilated area. You're not endangering anybody.
Yeah, as long as you got to the course without being near anybody.
Right.
Anywhere close. It's like the starter needs to stand. No starter. You don't get a starter. Nobody announces your name.
Go ahead, Slappy. Swing away. You're on the tee. Cool expression. You wondered about what it was going to look like for baseball. There is the aspect of umpires as well. And Major League Baseball today saying, well, hope you like your crew because you're going to get them for the entirety of homestands, which makes sense. Driving from one city to the next for games, umpiring entire homestands, and even staying at team hotels. Those are a few of the things under contemplation for umpires as Major League Baseball works towards restarting, according to sources like the players. Umpires need another round of training to prepare for the upcoming 60-game season. A crew of 3 will report to each summer league camp to get that training on July the 10th. That's really soon. Less than 2 weeks away.
Mm-hmm.
After passing COVID-19 testing, umpires will work live bullpen sessions and intra-squad games, culminating in a few regional exhibition contests featuring the 6 umpires who have been embedded with the 2 teams. Once the season begins, umpires will have to travel the country, but perhaps at a very reduced rate. Usually a crew works a series, then moves on, making sure to rotate around the league so as to not have grudges based on the same teams and their players and coaches and arguing the same umpires all the time. This season, if the schedule permits, an umpiring crew might stay for a team's entire homestand, thereby reducing travel. You already saw, by the way, that Major League Baseball basically said there will be no arguing with umpires. We can't afford to have you get that close to an umpire to argue with him to begin with. So it's just not, they're not going to have it.
Yeah, you can shout from the dugout, I guess, but you're just going to get rung up and thrown out.
Mm-hmm. If umpires are in a 2-team city, say Chicago or New York or L.A. or Anaheim, San Fran, Oakland area, they might bounce from one park to the other. Perhaps after working a series in Los Angeles with the Angels, umpires will drive with the Dodgers, they could drive over to Anaheim.
I don't know that I like that because, what if you've got a guy on the Yankees that tests positive and it comes out, in the 6th inning of a game over at Citi Field? Now you're like, oh.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that Angel Hernandez is here.
Yeah, I was just thinking about if there was ever a time that we could somehow utilize the pandemic and COVID to our advantage, it would be now if you're baseball and you want to get Cowboy out of the game.
Joe West is at risk, sir.
That's it.
Joe
West, I'm sorry. We understand your place as an umpire and how long you've been serving Major League Baseball, but we cannot roll your sizable ass back out onto that field, given how this afflicts those who are morbidly obese. And, Joe, you are, to put it mildly, morbidly obese.
Well, I'd say serving yourself under the guise of doing it for the greater good of the game, but yes.
Oh, I was trying to be kind before I levied the insult by noting that he is more than morbidly obese. This was an actual conversation I'm having as an MLB official to Joe. Thanks for your service, but let's be honest. You're morbidly obese, Joe. I can't let you and your rotund ass roll out there any longer. You could die. Now, I've often worried about your health and whether or not you were going to die on the field just by your eating habits. But with COVID introduced to the conversation, in addition to your disgusting, over-the-top eating habits and presence, well, Major League Baseball can't have that. Not on our conscience. No, sir. You will be umpiring maybe in another country, but not here in the United States this year.
Maybe you could do the review process. There you go. We'll give you the review process. You can do the Zoom meeting. I mean, how's that going to work, too? There's going to be – you can't have all the umpires in the same room when they're doing the review. You just have one dude there waiting for the phone call.
Joe, we've introduced new protocols here. It's for your own health.
It's called the Howie Schwab protocol.
Your safety. We decided, Joe, you and a handful of other umpires whom we've identified in the same boat need to show us a level of physical fitness. Remember the old presidential physical fitness tests, Joe? You have 5 days. Sprints down in Tampa on Tuesday. Pull-ups. How many can you do, Joe? How many pull-ups can you do, Joe? Can you do 6? Got till Tuesday. Need to see pull yourself up there off the ground, Joe, 6 times.
Yeah, seriously, nobody's really talked too much about this, but umpires and referees unions and leagues have their own officials. Are you just going to say no, to an official who's over a certain age? If you are the ACC, Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, the NBA, are you going to say if you're over a certain BMI, sorry, my man, you're not in good enough shape. We're not going to take the risk. Whether or not you want to is irrelevant, but we can't.
We can't do it.
I mean, there's 80 million discussions that everybody's got to have, but that's got to be one of them too.
I just pulled this up because I was looking back at the original tests, by the way, when we were all in school. People would be terrified about having to take that test. But I was just thinking about the shuttle run and watching Joe West attempt to do the shuttle run or the endurance run walk, pull-ups, push-ups, flexed arm hang.
The flexed arm hang.
The flexed arm hang, Joe.
God.
How long can you hang, Joe? Flexed arm. It's a lot of weight to be holding up, Joe. How strong are you?
I was good principally at three things: the push-ups, the sit-ups, and the flexed arm hang.
Well, you had the V-sit and the sit and reach, which came along later. Yeah. The testing awards and all that. Yeah, good stuff, man.
Yeah, I was a sit-up champion multiple times.
I always like the sit-ups. When you're that age, you could do thousands.
Oh,
you can
yes,
just
you
keep
can.
going. You can just go forever, right?
It's just all about getting in a rhythm.
Curl-ups or partial curl-ups. I forgot what those look like. Oh, yeah, now they have you do it with your hands crossed like that instead of out like that.
Well, with the
or behind your
with
head.
the sit-up? Yeah, it was hands crossed.
Yeah, hands crossed. Yeah.
They didn't want you to put it behind your head
No,
because
they
you
don't
hurt
want
your neck.
you to pull on your neck, yeah. And a student would hold your feet. And so if you got into a rhythm like you're talking about, you could fly.
Always wanted one of the strong kids.
Yo, you needed a strong kid. You needed a strong kid.
Or else you'd kick their face.
My guess is Joe couldn't do a single sit-up. Joe couldn't do the shuttle run without breaking his ankles, blowing out his knees. Joe couldn't do a flexed arm hang. Joe couldn't do a single pull-up. Joe couldn't do much besides waddle behind home plate. This is their chance. Come on, Major League Baseball. Do the right thing. Final hour coming up. Final hour of the Jeff Cameron Show, at least for today. Thanks for tuning to it. We do appreciate it. I'm Jeff, that's Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. That's where you go to listen live via the streaming free always. Should be noted, by the way, We didn't have any guests on today's program. But if we had guests on today's program, they would have been on the Phone Hero hotline. And we thank our friends at Phone Hero for jumping on board, specializing in iPhone and iPad repair. 2 locations, 2915 Cary Forest Parkway and 833 West Gain Street. Online at phoneherotlh.com. Welcome aboard, Phone Hero. We appreciate you. We do indeed.
I think it's a sneak peek, given that this is a holiday week, that maybe with headlines running tomorrow, your Skype call will be the Phone Hero Skype call.
Yeah, it's going to be the case. Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Who's the player you're most looking forward to seeing if we play football in the fall? Who's the guy on our team that you're most excited to see play football? I read Brendan Sinone's article on Jaleel McRae earlier today, and what stood out to me was that, we both really liked him the first time we saw him. He was a guy that obviously didn't get a ton of run, but we had high hopes for him and thought, okay, that guy's going to become a different kind of player for Florida State. You just look at his height and his weight and kind of his kind of nastiness to his game that I always appreciated that you saw a brief snippet from. And I'm just kind of curious where he ranks on that list, because he's high on mine.
So is it bad that I have to consult the roster again because it's been so long?
Been a minute, right?
Well, if he's able to play, Travis J is somebody I can't wait to see on the football field. I think Corbin is a really interesting proposition. I mean, there's going to be a drop-off when you have Dalvin Cook followed by Cam Akers.
Tough,
It's tough to follow that act. But Corbin is critical to what the offense could potentially be. And so, therefore, out of need, I really want to see him play.
Yeah, by the way, I would note that while Corbin will have a hard time living up to what Cam Akers was, and certainly nobody's going to live up to Dalvin Cook. He's a generational player. The fact that we had conversations, given that this is a school that has had some elite running backs in their time, including Warwick Dunn, and we're going, was Dalvin the best of all time? So good luck living up to that. But remember this, the end of Dalvin's time here and all of Cam Akers' time here featured those young men having to display those talents behind a sieve for an offensive line. So running backs who might be just a notch below those two players, but with a modicum of improvement on the offensive line, could look like world beaters.
Sure.
They actually had a hole to run through. Could you imagine that?
Yeah, you might believe that they're actually better than Cam Akers.
Right.
Which, how about this one for you? If he's healthy, Dante Lucas. Remember Dante Lucas?
I do remember Dante Lucas, and he's an important figure on the offensive line. He was the only one who didn't suck.
Well, if you get real developments and we have a camp in which we can develop, that could be fun.
I'm going to give you a guy because I got the chance, and I have an advantage here over you, Tom, because if you had seen him, you would have jumped on this as well, and it was only one day in pads, but just watching the way the man glides, watching the sort of effortless nature of the flow of his play and understanding of how to play the position in such a short period of time. Steven Dix Jr. is a guy that is going to push for real playing time as a freshman amongst the linebackers. He looks the part, Tom. He is smooth. He flashed. Corey Clark and I were standing next to each other doing one of these practices, and we both looked at each other and went, who's that? I mean, he had that appeal. You and I have done that before. We did it with Jalen Ramsey. We did it with other people where you go, oh, that guy looks different. Steven Dix Jr. looks different.
So 6'2", 226 is official listing for the spring. As a true freshman, that is...
Oh, when you look at him, Tom, he comes in, he fits the bill, and he moves so fluid.
If we had protected all, which is the key to winning 9 or 10 games if we play 12. But if we protect it all, and Tamorrion Terry's going to draw doubles, which he's going to, Jordan Young is another player. I mean, Keyshawn Helton is going to be a glue guy. There's no doubt that he's a glue guy in terms of the culture and then in the offense because he's going to go to the dirty areas. Jordan Young, though, he does things that are out of instinct that people would just kill to do one time. And that's the thing, that if you put somebody, again, in a system that's based on matchups with an iconic brand like Florida State, and you allow that guy into favorable matchups to do something in a one-on-one situation, he's going to win a lot of battles. We've got another one coming, I think, behind Tamorrion.
Well, we've kind of talked for some time about this receiving core as having talent. And if guys are able to get the most out of that talent, that could be a group of players that, truly turns heads. Tamorrion Terry is a star, but they've got other talented players. Warren Thompson is a guy at 6'3", 200-plus pounds out of Armwood who's we're waiting on that guy. I mean, they've got players.
It's between the ears. If he can ever channel his inner temper and he takes it out on the opponent, we got like when Kelvin Benjamin figured out in 2013 down in the swamp that the officials weren't going to call a thing.
And you could just throw your boy into the woods. Yeah.
Warren will abuse people. Channel it into the blocking game. I don't care, but he's got that.
No, he's a
mean streak to him.
spectacular talent, though. He's just he can do more than block. He's a guy that ought to go out there and make big play after big play. And they were on him hard in camp, so
he needs it. And that's probably one of the guys they're looking at like,
oh yeah,
got to start over with this again. Because they could have reprogrammed so many guys.
Well, and they were in the midst of that, right? I really do believe that the messaging was consistent across position groups. All of the coaches were saying the same things. You didn't walk to one part of the field and hear one thing and walk to another and hear another. No, they were all on the same page. The messaging was there. All the players were getting the same sorts of directives, same sort of thought. I guess you push certain themes, and players were buying into that. It really does stink. What the larger conversation, maybe we can do this later on, a larger conversation to have is what is reasonable to expect from a coaching staff who inherited this nightmare off of a losing campaign or off of a sorry 2-year run on the heels of a horrible final year with Jimbo, so 3 years of toxicity, and then no spring. What is reasonable to expect that this group do with no install, with no ability to continue to pound the message home, none of it, to gain any momentum? What is reasonable? Now, I don't want to answer that right now, but it is something to talk about. I've talked about it a lot just with my dad and people were like, what do you think is possible? Well, I don't know if we're going to play a season.
Yeah, so let's kickstart that 6-week clock first.
Yeah, I'm like, let's see that before I start getting into these other kinds of conversations. But, it'd be tough. Chef Cameron Show 97.9 ESPN Radio. whatever it might be, or a debate about an MVP or what a coach said or didn't do. But right now, they were just plowing ahead, and they were debating who's the best quarterback in the NFC South. And so it caught my attention. I was pouring coffee. My morning routine kind of goes something like this, depending on my workout schedule at Orange Theory Fitness. If I do the really early morning workout, I get up at 5-something, and I don't know why I'm a little bit weird. I have to shower before I work out, Tom. I know that's unique to me, but I can't help it. It's something about clean sweat. It doesn't make any sense. I know it doesn't. It's like you loving pizza and eating cheese. But it's just a quirk, right? So for me, I get up, I shower. I try to do it quietly. The kids are sleeping, especially now in the summer months, and if they don't have a camp, and basically half of them, if not almost all of them, have been canceled. So we have a whole lot of nothing going on in this household like every other household. And it's starting to get to me if you can't tell. But that said, my wife is working, but she still doesn't have to get up that early. So I shower quietly. I make my coffee, Tom. I kind of have whatever a little snack I'm going to have before I go work out. Now, other times, the workout's at 10 a.m. I went today to Orange Theory Fitness, Northside, 10 a.m. Great workout. Thanks, guys. Felt safe. Social distancing practices in place. Got after it. That said, so I have a little time in the morning. I get up at 6, whatever, and I same thing. Start the coffee, feed the dogs, do what you do, take out the garbage. And I throw on the morning shows to see.
Today was recycling day, by the way.
Today was. Actually, we've been really good. I would not have been embarrassed by today's reaction from the recyclers who came by. They would have been like, oh, it looks like Cameron took it easy this past week. Not a lot there. So anyhow, I was up this morning. I made sure the recycling was out. I poured my coffee, and I sat down to tackle the news of the day. And these days, you guys know this, the news is not good. There's nothing positive in the news. And I'm not saying it as, hey, these networks, if it bleeds, it leads type stuff. We get all that. No, I'm saying there's just no good news. This year, as you guys know, profoundly sucks. And all around us, devastation. So it's tough to stomach. And where do you start? I'm not big on the for-profit news stations. It pisses me off. It's fear and consumption at all times. So I don't like to go that route. I like to go with the bland, straightforward, rather banal, hey, here's your weather. This is what they're voting on today. And, oh, by the way, your state's looking like this. And that's kind of the end of it. I move forward, right? But sports is usually the place you go to escape a lot of the nonsense, where you say, all right, well, I know there's not a lot going on in sport right now, but I do want to know how these leagues are tackling each of the stages, and I'm kind of wondering what they're going to talk about because, I'm a talk show host myself, and we do talk about sports when we can, and every now and then you might want to get an idea, have something be the impetus for a conversation. We try to have more conversations on this show. That's the shift this show has taken over the years. It is more of a podcast than it is specific to radio in a different time period. So anyhow, I sat down, and there I was. My workout wasn't until 10, and I began to watch the shows. And eventually, Get Up. What time does that show start? I don't even know. I don't even look at the clock. Was that 8?
I feel like it changes every day because at 10 o'clock, they're like, well, first take will be on in 15 minutes. And then sometimes like, well, first take will be on in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
They do different times every day now.
It just seems that way,
Notice also that Around the Horn and PTI, not that I care about those shows, but you have them on in the background of The Office. Like they're like 15 minutes now or 20 minutes, or sometimes they're on at 6 o'clock Sports Center. Everybody has like these, irregular schedules at best.
It's what we're forced into, and I actually give everybody a pass, and I hope you guys give us one too, because it's difficult. You just don't know what you can and can't do on a daily basis. If you have an employee at the office who doesn't feel well, he's got to stay home. Was he in contact or she was in contact with anybody here? And we all got to go home. It's a tough time. I'm not telling you things you don't already know. And I greatly appreciate that you've stuck with us and listened. And it means a lot to me to be able to do this show on a regular basis, even with precious little in the way of sports to get to, like actual games from the night before. There's always big picture topics. There are always themes, things like that. But, yeah, I get it. It would be nice to have some damn games and results beyond just what happened over the weekend on the PGA Tour. Got it. So I'm watching because I am curious, what are they going to talk about? They too have sponsors. They too have people they have to perform and provide a service for, and they got to do that. And so on they go, and they're having this raging debate about who the best quarterback in the NFC South is. Now that Cam Newton's gone from Carolina, they're like, well, Tom Brady with the Bucs. Is it Drew Brees with the Saints still? Where does Matt Ryan fit in Atlanta? Up and down they go. Teddy Bridgewater now taking over at Carolina. And they're talking about the season like it's a certainty. Like there's just nothing going on. Well, let's go through the schedules and let's talk about how it's going to impact each quarterback for each team. And, I mean, they spent 15 to 20 minutes just debating about elements of the depth chart and the teams and their schedule and who's going to win out the South and what do you expect from Tom Brady. And that bled over into another debate about do you see an offense out there that's good enough to keep Kansas City off the field? Because eventually, if you're in the AFC, you're going to have to go through them in the playoffs. And can anybody beat them? And boy, I thought I really, really admire that sort of optimism and or ability to completely fake that sort of optimism as if you believe it. Like to talk about it with conviction that this is going to happen, that we're going to be seeing, that we're going to watch football in the fall, because I got to tell you, as I sit here today, I'm not so sure. And it's very unsettling. And I'm not going to lie to you, we're all scared to death. Because it's hugely important to all of us, not just our pocketbooks, just not the economics, although it is vital to so many businesses in this town and throughout the country. We get that. It's vital to the university. It's vital to the restaurant business. It's vital to the hotel industry. It's vital to all of us who work in sports or live in this community that Florida State be playing games in the fall. And it's really vital to Florida State University. So you think about that, and you're paralyzed. You're a little paralyzed. And I would love to sit down and talk about what the Atlantic is going to look like and what I think the impact of not getting spring football in outside of those 3 practices are going to have on Mike Norvell and his staff, and the direction I thought they were going, and how that gets, now there's a hiccup in that, and that gets kind of, derailed by all of this. But I would have to first be certain that we're playing football in the fall to do that and to engage in that. And it's first time in a long time, Tom. I'm just not so sure. It feels like it's trending in the wrong direction. And it's not an over-the-top panic attack. It's not me saying, oh, woe is us or anything like that. It's being pragmatic. It's just being really honest with yourself when you watch these cases trend the way that they have. And you understand that in order to play, you're likely going to have, at the very least, students on campus to justify asking your student athletes to go out there and play football. And you just don't know how they're going to get that done. You really don't know how they're going to get that done. It's July. Starting tomorrow, right? It's July. I'll just say this. You get to mid-July and we're having these sort of conversations, this issue, and cases are surging in places throughout the country, throughout the South. You can't start on time. Let's just put it that way. You may have a season. It ain't going to start on time if this continues.
Yeah, I think the protocol where players come in for the actual meetings, right? You could do football activities beyond the few hours you get a week to interact, and then obviously the weight room stuff. Like when you're able to start doing the real football activities and ramp up, it's like 2 weeks, right? 2.5 weeks?
Yeah.
Right. So
you get 6 weeks worth because they give you the
Right. So you're looking at 2.5 weeks before that process begins.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks goes quick, as we have found out.
It feels far-fetched right now. I could tell you that, the first thing that hit me was yesterday when I was alerted that Florida State was delaying its phase 2 about employees returning to campus and employees being able to work in their office buildings, whether it be on the proper campus or towards the School of Engineering, Innovation Park. I mean, all of these things are precursors to getting the kids on campus. And make no mistake, getting kids on campus and being full steam ahead is a precursor to football. The football players may be here first, right? And the basketball players for both men's and women's may be here first. But the precursor to football is having a fall semester, like one in which kids can be on campus.
Yeah.
I know it sounds backwards given who returned to campus first, but that's how it's got to work. Unless there is a drastic change in people's attitudes towards amateur athletes working in a way that the students that they're supposed to be graduating with and taking classes with cannot do. Unless there's a drastic change in that opinion, you have to have kids on campus in the fall.
Yeah.
And who in their right mind who would be out of state right now would say, I've got no reservations about putting my son or daughter on a plane to go down to any number of schools here in the state of Florida or in this region? You'd have pause. And that might be enough to change the tenor of the conversation. Now, 2 weeks from now, it could look very different.
Better hope so. Hope so.
If you're judging by how long a spike takes in other parts of the country, you're cutting it close at best.
Yeah, it's devastating, man. And I talked about it weeks ago with I called it psychological terror. And I did not mean to utilize scare tactics. I did not want to sound over the top, did not want to be an alarmist in a way that one would look at and listen to and say, well, obviously he's got a radio program to run, and it certainly helps the more titillating and salacious it is. That's not what I'm going for. I'm having an honest conversation with you and our listeners. But it feels a bit like psychological terror because of all the various facets of life in this city and in this region and in this country that are affected by this virus and by the shutdown of many different occupations and or recreations. I mean, you're not getting a sense that this is getting better anytime soon.
The media, there's no doubt, especially cable news, profits off of fear and consumption.
Yes, they do.
Of course they do. But there are times where feeling panicked or paralyzed or amped up, anxious.
Yeah.
I mean, peaked. I know the word is a negative word now, but triggered by something. You know, it evokes an emotion. There are times when that's reasonable. But, 9/11, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and what happened just happened.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were panicked and triggered.
On high alert.
On high alert.
That's right.
And they had a right to be.
Yes.
They absolutely had a right to be.
Yeah, no, it informs decisions that you make. Yes, of course.
Is that the same thing as what the state of Florida is going through right now? No. But is it nothing? No. It's not nothing either.
It's definitely not nothing.
And there are too many voices out there saying it's nothing. Stop that. Please. Let's have a conversation about how to navigate the problem. It's a problem.
Well, and that conversation, if we're going to look big picture, so sports will come back eventually. I mean, at some point, it may not be in as timely a fashion as we'd like it to be. It may be longer than we had hoped to wait, and we're all desperately holding on to that hope, clinging to the idea that it'll be sooner rather than later. And who knows? That way, I don't want to overstate my case here about how I have a growing concern that this is not going to happen anytime soon. But one thing that's going to happen is eventually, spectator sports will happen once again. And when they start opening back up, there are going to be drastic changes to the way that you take in your sports, your entertainment in general. Now, that's been ongoing for some time now, but usually those are technological advancements that lead to different ways in which you can access your sports, buy tickets, whatever it might be, right? But now we're going to go through profound safety checks. Spectator sports will happen again, and you damn sure will be wearing a mask if you expect to walk into that stadium. That is going to happen. That is going to be mandated. Now, what, forever? No.
Yeah, in the short term, I'd say.
Oh, without question.
I do think that a temperature check may be in the long-term vision of things.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things you see being utilized now by gyms and other places are things that are going to be used across, especially initially. Now we get 3 or 4 years removed from this.
Yeah. Things
tend to return to as they always were. But some things are never going back. I mean, we were already moving in certain directions in terms of ticket takers. If that's like your career, you're about done. Mm-hmm. There ain't going to be no ticket takers.
They might be temperature takers, though.
Maybe.
That's the thing. Or people who are looking at a monitor almost like you're going through security in an airport. And there's another example. Yeah. That's never rolled back all the way to what it was.
That's never going to either. No.
You could go visit or go see your grandparents get off the plane at the damn gate.
Yeah, it was great.
In the terminal.
Yeah, I loved it.
you might, stomp up and down saying, see, I don't want that kind of crap. You may not. Maybe I don't either. But guess what? It exists,
well,
and that's the way it is.
It's also not unreasonable. You have to make certain sacrifices in order to keep people safe. I get that. I mean, that's an ongoing debate, and it's one that is really fascinating and has many, many aspects to it.
Well, and to return to the point, it's hard to see it starting on time given where we are. If you're just time stamping June 30th, 2020, it's hard to see it. 3 weeks ago, it wasn't hard to see it. 3 weeks from now, who knows? Who knows? But when you see caseloads just going through the roof, it's not exactly ideal.
Yeah, I think the fan experience is just going to change quite a bit. And I here, by the way, let's not get sidetracked. Who cares? At this point, I don't care if the fan experience is radically altered, so long as there is a freaking experience. Let's go have an experience. Let's go see a game. I'll wear a hazmat suit at this point and sit on the 50-yard line. I don't care.
I'll watch on the monitor. That'll be fine.
But, yeah.
But the NBA is going to be the interesting one to me, just given that they didn't pick Chicago. It's Orlando. And it's quite the intersection of a time that they're looking to roll stuff out. I believe the announcement was today that it's officially like the 13th of June, or if I got the date wrong, excuse me. But they've got a couple of weeks where it's like, this is when the ramp-up really starts. You're working out together. All these things are going to be in place. Mm-hmm. And you just feel this intersectional moment coming for sports again. And look at who's there at the point. It's the NBA. Now, it was foisted upon them the first time around, but here you go. You've picked Orlando, Florida, at the peak of Florida's troubles. You could have started this thing a month ago, and people would have said, oh, too bad. Well, it's a good thing they got it going before the troubles got started, so their protocols were in place. No, they're going to start at the peak of what Florida is experiencing in COVID-19 times. If they power through and things end up being okay because the bubble is successfully sealed at all parts, then maybe it signals that Major League Baseball can move forward, and maybe it gives collegiate athletics hope or university presidents hope.
Yeah, that would give us hope, Tom.
But, I mean, that's a big-ass if.
It is a big-ass if, and they did say today that was one of the topics, and I did find that fascinating because they talked about the bubble that was created in Orlando, and per our conversation on this show yesterday, they really did address a lot of the concerns that people have about whether this can even be done. There is a massive chartered bus that takes people from the airport directly to the bubble, and the amount. So, for example, one of ESPN's lead reporters that is going to be covering the NBA for the league for the network. I think her name is Malika or Malika. I can't. If I'm not saying her name wrong, it's a mistake. I've only seen her once, and I didn't recognize her. She was new to me, but it might be Malika. Anyhow, she did a great job this morning. She said it was her and a producer on this massive bus and nobody else, and they secure it, and even the bus driver is living there. He's living on the campus. Yep, yeah. He can't leave. So they all get tested daily. Tom, daily. We wondered what the frequency would be.
You have to.
It's daily. Yeah, it's daily. Well, right. And so we get back to this about the costs. Oh, my Lord. I mean, I know they'd rather recoup something rather than nothing, of course. But boy, oh, boy, this is going to be costly for universities.
For universities, yes. For the NBA, it's not nearly as bad because you're in a bubble. You don't have to do the travel. You don't have to pay for the travel across the country for all of these series, so you can offset some of it just to clean it up. So the league's 22 teams participating in the resumed season will travel to Orlando on a staggered basis between July 7th and July 9th.
Yeah.
That's a week and a half away, man.
Yeah, they're going. They're rolling on Big River. Well, good. Let them go, Tom. Somebody's got to move forward.
It's a week from today. Bad math on my part. So, yes, by this time next week, the first teams will be on their way to Orlando.
Yeah. Listen, if this is going to work, if they're going to make it work the way the EPL and others have, you got to go. You got to see if your protocols are sound.
Are they strong enough? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it will be important. You're right to bring that point up, and maybe I'll feel some relief if they are able to power ahead, play out their remaining season, and do their tournament. And if there are minimal hiccups, I mean, there are going to be some missteps. There are going to be problems. Even the PGA Tour, which really took this very, very seriously, they had hundreds of pages that you had to read through. I mean, they really looked at everything, and it is an easier sport to do it in. Even they've had a couple of hiccups. Where, for example, swing coaches were able to just walk out there on the course. That's a problem.
As of last week, they were allowed to just walk out there and not be tested.
Not anymore. But the point would be they made those changes because that slipped through the cracks, and they realized that was a mistake.
Here's something I'm thinking of, and it's outside the box, but you got to be outside the box in these times. Is there a way to put together a schedule where, let's just say college basketball, it's easier because we're comparing, kind of apples to apples with the roster size and how big the organization is. Football of games to be played over the course of a week. And then, I mean, if there's going to be a large component of online learning anyway at the collegiate level over the next academic year, right? What the hell difference does it make if your kid is in a classroom or not? If you've got an athlete, if you've got a men's or a women's basketball player, and you want to make their money for the conference, all that stuff, and you could get Georgia Tech, NC State, Clemson, Florida State, Miami together in a place, and they stay there for a couple of weeks, and they do all their classwork online. They do a lot of it anyway when they're traveling. That's where they conduct their practices. You stagger practice times, you play the games, and you test people like crazy. Once that series of round robin is over, you return home for a couple of days, test, and then you go to the next hub place and you play a round robin. For football, sure.
Yeah. You're talking about other sports?
I was just talking about basketball because it's easier for the roster size to do.
Yeah.
It's just when you're looking at the size of what it takes to run a university like Florida State University and all of the people that are required to make that thing hum, not just for the sports, but for the entire facilities at a greater rate.
I keep thinking to myself, well, when I go down that road, it is truly a rabbit hole that you can spend hours on because I start with, is it reasonable to expect that fans are going to be in Doak Campbell Stadium to watch football this year? Is it reasonable to expect that you could put together a 9-game or an 8-game schedule? Okay, well, let's try to do that. All right, well, what's that look like, and who are you playing? Are you going up to Syracuse? Pitt coming down here? That doesn't seem likely. All right, then can we replace them? Will the league allow for us to say, well, Georgia Tech will play?
First thing I do is move all of the long flight games to the back end of the season.
Yeah.
I'd move up the short travel games to the beginning of the season. I know that Florida's the weekend after Thanksgiving. Sorry, not this year.
Sorry, it's going to be the second game of the year.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have backup plan schedule. If everybody has the long travel game schedule at the same time, then maybe regionally you can make some tie-ins happen.
Yeah.
Like if UCF's trip to Connecticut could be moved or vice versa, right? I know that they don't play at the same level anymore. But that conference has a big footprint too. So if you and it's October 25th or 24th, whatever that weekend is, and you could get on that plane. But let's not have those things staggered towards the beginning of the year. Let's move them all to the end of the year as neatly as we can to afford ourselves the most time possible to be able to play those.
What a horrible time to have opened the Champions Club. Oh, sweet Jesus, they're screwed. You can't have that thing. All that is people right next to each other in a buffet-style bonanza. Good luck with that.
Yeah, you'd have to...
You're screwed.
You have to mandate they go to their seats, and there's like an orderly process by which you get in. And
and only a very small percentage because you can't. I mean,
you got to slash that thing.
If you're on the lower level of the Champions Club, not the highest level, you're screwed. Those seats are on top of each other.
They all are kind of.
Well, the higher up you get, it gets a little better.
Kind of like the upper deck at the Civic Center. I was like,
well, but the point is that
I thought people were going to be able to stretch out a little bit.
So what percentage of those folks can go and want to go? And all of the ancillary benefits of what you pay for with that buffet style of food that you go and no, that ain't happening.
No, and that's where if you just look at it and you say, is it feasible? And you want to recoup dollars, and to college football, attendance matters so greatly for each university. Mm-hmm. Is it not better to try and start it in February? And if we lose a couple kids to the draft, so be it. Clemson's going to lose more than we will.
Yes. That'd be great.
ATN, Trevor Lawrence.
We got two
Peace.
very important players.
Peace.
Yeah, get the hell up out of here. Well, and also, I just feel like if you could say with certainty that's what we're doing. Like, okay, we know by February, if we're very careful and we do things, if people wear masks and we do things the smart way, we're going to be able to get started. Now, folks, let's do our part so we can get started in February. At least that's the light at the end of the tunnel. At least businesses and people in this community could go, okay, I know that if we can hang on, would help to get another check, but if we can hang on until February, things return.
Well, that's where it would help to have a unified voice and somebody just to say, here's what we're looking at for the economy.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping old Fauci over here is right, that we're going to have something in the way of a vaccine by the end of the year or the early part of next year. And with that in mind, we're looking at full rollouts in at the soonest the fall, but more likely the end of the calendar year or into next year. And we're going to make preparations and protocols and payments to the citizens available to get us over the hump right now.
Yeah.
If not now, when can the government ever help you?
Yeah.
You know,
So-
that's a hell of a message to push.
Yeah.
Everybody hold tight. Let's band together.
Let's get through this.
You got to get to the grocery stores, fine. Different parts of the country, you might be on, you might be off.
Yeah.
It depends on the caseload.
Yeah.
But we're going to give you that flexibility, and here's how it's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, doesn't that already sound very nice
It would be
to the
nice.
ear?
It would be very nice.
Doesn't that allay some concerns if you just take that message and you believed it was real for a second?
Well, and I just keep thinking about it's not just a matter of opening up and saying we're playing these games and that everybody can come back or a percentage can come back. Fans have to, I'm looking at it now from the aspect of if you're the university or you're a professional team and you want to house fans in order to recoup money, if you're trying to attempt to slowly reintegrate fans into the experience. Listen, I don't frankly care if I go to the games or not. I'm like you. I could watch. Hell, these days I could watch it on my 82-inch television. I don't care if I ever go to a game again right now. But what I would tell you is this. They do care that they're able to get some people in the stands, and it is vital to the economy that people go to these games and participate. And what you had to do post 9/11, you brought up 9/11 earlier, was make fans feel safe. And there had to be visual indicators that things were safer. So that involves security checks,
Military.
longer lines, military, you name it, right? All that stuff. That it happened that way. You're going to have to do something akin to that in order to have any shot at all of getting people to come back. Listen, there's a small percentage of people like, screw it. If they say I can go, I'm going. But, man, that ain't 80,000 people. That's 30,000 if you can have it, maybe.
If you can have it, and guess what? You're going to be paying through the nose in the secondary market unless your initial gift to the university is, a robust $10,000 to $15,000 a year or whatever it is. But I think what we're arriving at here, just you and me talking, is if you're looking at what's in the best interest of my sport to make the most money, you got to start it later in college. Because
You
every
could even
dollar,
start in October. Maybe it's October.
but you also have to come to an understanding with the networks. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Networks are going to be so starved for content, they don't give a
They're
damn if
dying
it's
right
February,
now. Yes,
October.
yes.
They don't care.
They just want you to play.
But you've got to get you got to get it in writing, or at least have an understanding on a conference call that every dollar that we are owed in this contract is going to come our way. It's coming our way. So if that means that we have 25 cents on the SEC's dollar, we need all 25 of those cents, please.
Yeah.
ESPN. And if that means that we start the season in February, you're still paying for all that stuff, because we need to know that playing in the spring is not going to cost us money. We would only do it if it's in the best interest of us beyond the health conversation.
You've got a lot of people who have to be willing to, get on the same page and acquiesce in order for those in a position to be devastated economically by this to help allay some of that. And that there's no way around the fact that this is going to be unlike anything they've ever had to go through, and money is going to be lost by universities across the country, sports leagues across the country, you name it. But how much can we mitigate that through being flexible in conversations, contracts, etc.? Understanding that these are extraordinary times, I need you to take extraordinary measures for us to be able to do this.
Yeah, and the hard part is, okay, so let's just say that by kickoff on Labor Day weekend, things look way better here. And they might.
They might.
But what if the Carolinas and Kentucky and Mississippi are going through what we're going through right now?
Correct.
That's the hard part.
That's where I got
we
discouraged.
may be out of it, but it might be somewhere else, just like it is right here in terms of percentages.
A prime example is New York was the epicenter. New York was on fire. We all sat back in awe what was happening in New York. They're bringing in ships. We're sitting there going, oh, Jesus, New York, this is never going to be the same. And now New York is slowly reopening.
They're rolling back.
Slowly, they're doing that. And meanwhile, Texas, Arizona, Florida, South Carolina, other states are like, whoa, we may have gotten a little crazy here, a little carried away. Slow your roll. Well, there you go. I mean, who would have thought that? Going back to March in April, when we were looking at New York and going, Jesus, New York.
Well, that's why you're very careful about the victory laps you take in press conferences.
Yes,
but,
of course.
Yeah, I don't know. Here's the other question, and here's another big picture question. Are these states going to go through a second wave if we go through hell through the first? And what about the ones up in different regions? Are they going to go through a second wave like was predicted because they lower the risk now, and then come December, guess who's back in the news? New York, New Jersey. I mean, Jesus, these are big questions.
And what's hard and makes you feel like you're in limbo, which leads to the consternation that I expressed at the beginning of this segment 30 minutes ago, is that there aren't definitive yeses or nos or pragmatic answers that are applicable across the board for every state, county, you name it. It's different everywhere. You just don't know. And that lack of certainty, especially when it involves economics and health, pretty profound elements of our life. Because we think about our families and we think about our friends and we think about our businesses and how they're all intertwined. That your happiness is intertwined. Your health is intertwined with how your business is doing and how you're able to provide for the people you love.
And there's the other fundamental question that is, it's on the other side of the argument, but it's a legitimate question.
If you're not going to give me a check, I have to go back to work, right? And people are going to die. Got it. I know.
We're going to have to roll through, and we're going to have to power through.
And that's unfair to ask certain people to do.
Well, especially given that the cases are mounting exponentially so. Right.
Well,
I think that's where everybody is right now. Jesus.
Throw the freaking computer off the wall.
There's a great clip from these. I'm the only person in the world I think left who likes a good prank call. But Jack Nicholson prank calls, there's a soundboard, and you could play.
Yeah.
And there's this one clip of him where he goes, Jesus Christ. And that's how I feel.
How you feel
Jack
right
Nicholson
now.
going, Jesus Christ.
We'll come back, wrap it up. uncertainty. I hate it. Being in limbo is a bad feeling. That's it. That's all there is to it.
I've got something for you.
Susie, I was from Philly, but they got rid of me, so I'm going with the Giants.
Well, let's see if the
That's the way we end every show now, with somebody passing gas.
I could play the fraudulent goats. That'd be different.
Fraudulent goats are good. I saw footage yesterday. You can find it on the interwebs, kids, of a family that raised a goat by hand. Basically, fed it a bottle. It was abandoned. It had lost its mother or something. And they raised the goat, and this was in her first, I think, 6 months of life, and now she's an adult goat amongst all the other goats. When they come to visit and say hi to the goats, she hauls ass. She's imprinted with them. She hauls. I've never seen a goat run this fast in my life. She comes flying at them towards the fence, just going, bah, bah, bah. She's so excited. Yeah. And she is flying. All the other goats just kind of look at her like, what is she doing? She's so excited to see them. It's a couple. And it's just the most adorable thing. She's smiling with those crazy eyes, running straight at him. And then she gets to the fence and goes, she wants to be petted and loved on. I'm like, oh, that's the cutest thing ever.
That's
that made me smile.
Was that the dodo? Because the dodo is
Dodo
the service.
does stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the dodo is
awesome.
Awesome and adorable, but I feel like for South Park fans, it's like the Chimpokemon of our time. I feel like they're going to ask us to do unspeakably bad things because
at some
it's
point,
just also positive.
Yeah,
like,
they got
I
us.
love the dodo. It's like, now you must slaughter. Da-da-da-da-da. You're like, oh my God.
What happened to Dodo?
Well,
No.
but the dodo is so sweet. Maybe I should. I don't know.
Right thing to do. No, you'll find the one. You'll find the goat hauling ass to come say hey to the people that saved her life. She's imprinted. And it's funny because you see her, she's out there grazing with all the other goats, and just like, there they are.
Yeah. That's like the Cane Hill people on Twitter.
They're the best.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have Cuthbert, the goose.
Yeah, who I
Hello,
love.
Cuthbert.
Yeah.
Cuthbert. Hello. Well, they were on vacation for a week or two. They took their holiday, and they come back, and Cuthbert could not be consoled. He was so happy.
He was so happy.
It was just beside itself. I'm like, I didn't know a goose
cared so much.
And Cuthbert gives a damn.
Oh, he loves him.
He's like Harbaugh in the preseason. Cuthbert cares
He
deeply.
cares deeply about your
It's okay,
presence.
Cuthbert. He's freaking out.
He's like, don't ever leave me like that again. It was a week and a half. What the hell are you doing? What's wrong with you? I was out here on my own. It's a wild place. Look around. Good work out of you. Thanks, Matthew. Be well, everybody. Have a good night. We'll talk to you later.